Story 1. My girlfriend ended things after listening to a toxic friend who claimed I was beneath her. Yet hours later she came back crying and I shut the door. I'm a 28-year-old guy from a small town in the Midwest, and I've been holding on to this story for a while. I guess it's time to get it all out. I want to talk about my ex, Amelia, and how things unraveled between us. This all started back in high school, so let me take you there first. Amelia and I met during sophomore year. She wasn't the loud, attention-seeking type like a lot of other girls in our grade. She was more of the quiet, keep-to-herself kind of person. But once you got her talking, she had this way of lighting up, like she had a million dreams in her head all trying to spill out at once. She wanted to work in publishing and dreamed of living in a big city, working with books, and maybe even writing her own someday. I was hooked from the start. Me, I wasn't what you'd call ambitious back then. I wasn't failing classes or anything, but I didn't have my life planned out the way Amelia did. I was the guy who was always fixing things. If something broke in shop class, I'd be the one the teacher called over. If my friend's parents needed help with a leaky faucet, I'd be there with a wrench. By junior year, I realized I could turn that into a business. So, while other kids were worried about prom or the SATs, I was setting up a small plumbing operation. By the time senior year rolled around, Amelia and I were inseparable. We went to prom together, watched crappy rom-coms in my basement, and spent hours talking about our futures. I don't know how to explain it, but we just clicked. She was my first everything, first kiss, first love, first real heartbreak, but we'll get to that. Amelia got into a prestigious university, and I couldn't have been prouder. I still remember the day she got her acceptance letter. She ran over to my house, waving the envelope like it was a golden ticket. I hugged her so tight I thought I might break her. That was Amelia, though, always aiming high, always pushing herself. When she left for school, I didn't see it as the end of us. I saw it as the next step. I kept working on my plumbing business, and by then it was doing pretty well. Nothing glamorous, but steady money was coming in. I figured if she was chasing her dreams, the least I could do was make. Sure, she didn't have to worry about things like rent or groceries. So that's what I did. I helped pay her rent, sent her money for books, and even surprised her with care packages during finals week. I'd drive 4 hours to her dorm just to spend the weekend together. It wasn't easy, but I didn't mind. She was my girl, and I wanted to make her life easier so she could focus on school. I'll admit, there were moments when it felt like I was putting in more effort than she was. Amelia was busy with classes, internships, and networking events, which I understood, but sometimes I'd call or text her, and it felt like I was interrupting something more important. She'd say things like, "Sorry, I've just been so swamped," or "We'll talk later, okay?" Later didn't always come, but when we were together, it was like no time had passed. I'd visit her, and we'd spend hours just walking around campus or sitting in her tiny apartment talking about everything and nothing. Those were the moments that kept me going. After she graduated, Amelia landed a job at a well-known publishing house. It wasn't her dream role, she wasn't editing bestsellers or writing her own book yet, but it was a start. She was excited, and I was excited for her. I thought we had made it through the hard part. Now it was time to build our future. By then, my plumbing business was doing better than ever. I'd expanded, hired a couple of guys to help with the workload, and was even thinking about opening a second location. I was proud of what I'd built, even if it wasn't the job that came with fancy titles or a corner office. Amelia used to joke, "You're the CEO of pipes," and I loved that she could see the humor in it. For a while, things were good. I kept supporting her the way I always had. If she needed help with anything, I'd send her the money. If she had a big project at work, I'd show up with her favorite takeout so she wouldn't have to cook. On weekends, we'd take little trips or just hang out and binge-watch whatever show we were into at the time. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. But there were signs that things weren't as solid as I thought. Her work seemed to take over her life. She loved what she was doing, but it was like she was always trying to prove something to her boss, her co-workers, maybe even to herself. I'd try to get her to slow down, to take a break, but she'd say things like, "You don't get it. In this industry, you have to hustle." I tried to be understanding, but there were times when it felt like we were growing apart. I didn't want to admit it, though. I figured every couple goes through rough patches, and we'd get through ours, too. After all, we'd been together since we were kids. If anyone could make it, it was us. At least, that's what I thought before Liz showed up. Liz was one of Amelia's co-workers, and at first she seemed cool. Amelia would mention her here and there, saying stuff like, "Liz says she's jealous of how supportive you are," or "Liz thinks it's sweet that you drive me lunch when I'm too busy to leave the office." I didn't think much of it. It's normal for people to talk about their relationships at work, right? But Liz wasn't just talking. She was planting seeds. The first time I noticed something off was when Amelia mentioned a casual conversation they had during lunch. Apparently, Liz said, "You're so lucky your boyfriend supports you chasing your dreams. Most guys would feel threatened by a woman with ambition." Sounds like a compliment, right? But Amelia added, she said most guys like that are secretly controlling. She asked if you ever hold money over my head. I laughed it off at the time because it was ridiculous. I'd never once made Amelia feel like she owed me for anything. If anything, I always encouraged her to focus on herself and let me worry about the bills. But I could tell it stuck in Amelia's mind because she started insisting on paying. For little things here and there, like coffee or gas money when we'd go on a trip. It wasn't a big deal, but it felt like the dynamic between us was shifting. Then came the criticisms. Liz was always finding something wrong with what I did, no matter how thoughtful or kind it was. One day, I surprised Amelia at work with her favorite sushi because she'd mentioned skipping lunch to finish an assignment. She texted me later, thanking me, but then added, "Liz said it was sweet. But she thought it was weird you didn't ask what I wanted first." I was confused. I brought her the exact order she always got at her favorite spot. Why would I need to ask? Another time, Amelia and I went out for a nice dinner to celebrate her first promotion. We were having a great time until she mentioned, "Liz thinks you should have let me pick the place. She says you always take control of stuff like that." I'd chosen the restaurant because it was a spot she'd been wanting to try for months. But suddenly it felt like even doing something nice could be twisted into a flaw. Liz didn't stop at my gestures. She had plenty to say about my job too. One night I was fixing a clogged sink in Amelia's apartment when she mentioned offhand, "Liz asked what you do for work today." When I told her you own a plumbing business, she said, "Oh, that's cute." Cute. Owning a business isn't cute. It's hard work and I'd built it from the ground up. But that wasn't even the worst part, Amelia added. She asked if I ever wished you did something more polished, like in an office or something. That one stung. I knew I wasn't some big-shot executive, but I'd always been proud of what I did. My business paid the bills and it was honest work. Still, Amelia reassured me, "Liz is just blunt sometimes. Don't take it personally." But I could see Liz's words starting to seep into Amelia's thoughts. Amelia started making little comments that felt out of character. Things like, "Do you ever think about expanding your business into something bigger? Or have you ever thought about taking classes to learn more about business management?" On the surface, they sounded like innocent questions, but paired with everything Liz had been saying, they felt loaded. It wasn't just the comments, though. Liz had this way of inserting herself into our lives, even when I wasn't around. For example, Amelia told me about a work event where everyone brought their partners. I couldn't make it because I had an emergency call from a regular client whose basement was flooding. When Amelia mentioned why I wasn't there, Liz said, "See, that's the thing with guys like him. Their work always comes first." Amelia said she stuck up for me, but the seed was planted. Later, she asked, "Do you think you'll always have to handle emergencies like that? What happens when we have kids someday?" Liz's poison wasn't just in the things she said. It was in how she framed herself as the wise friend who knew better. Anytime Amelia and I had a disagreement, Liz would swoop in with her unsolicited opinions. If I forgot to text Amelia back right away, Liz would say, "That's a red flag. Communication is so important." If I planned any kind of surprise, Liz would ask, "Don't you wish he'd ask for your input more?" It was like she couldn't stand the idea of us being happy. One of the most blatant moments came when I helped Amelia move into a new apartment. I spent the whole weekend hauling furniture, assembling shelves, and fixing little things around the place. Amelia thanked me but later mentioned, "Liz said it's great that you're so handy, but she thinks it's weird you didn't hire movers. She said it's not worth risking your back over some boxes." I was floored. Who criticizes someone for helping their girlfriend move? What really got to me was how Amelia started questioning herself and us. She'd say things like, Do you think we're too different? Or Liz says relationships like ours only work for so long. I'd always reassure her, reminding her of everything we'd built together. But the more I tried to hold us together, the more Liz seemed to be pulling us apart. I can't believe how much power Liz had over our relationship at the time. I didn't want to believe that someone could be so intentionally destructive. But Liz wasn't just some opinionated coworker. She was a snake in the grass, and I didn't realize how bad it was until it was too late. Then came the big night. I had it all planned out. That night was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter for me, and Amelia, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. But instead, it was the night everything fell apart. We'd been dating for nearly a decade since high school, through all the ups and downs. I never doubted what we had, so I decided it was time to take the next step. I thought it would make Amelia feel safe after all the insecurities she'd been having. I bought the ring a month ago. It wasn't just flashy or over the top, it was thoughtful. I'd made sure it was designed the way I wanted, with both of our birthstones, forming a heart in the center and small diamonds framing it. There was even room to add stones later for when we had kids. I'd also made a custom box with 2 buttons, one that lit up yes and another for no. It was cheesy, sure, but it felt like us. I wanted her to see how much thought I'd put into it, how much I'd planned for our future. That night, I picked her up for dinner at a cozy Italian spot she'd mentioned wanting to try. I'd reserved a quiet table in the corner, thinking it would be the perfect spot for the proposal. I'd rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times in my head. The night started off fine. She looked beautiful as always, wearing this emerald dress that matched the color of her eyes. We talked about her work and my business, and for a while it felt like old times. But there was something off about her. She was quieter than usual, distracted, almost like her mind was somewhere else. Halfway through the meal, I reached for the small box in my pocket. My palms were sweaty and my heart was pounding. I was about to pull it out when she cleared her throat and said, "I need to talk to you about something." I froze, hands still in my pocket. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked down at her plate, not at me, and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us lately, and I think we need to take a break." I sat there, stunned. A break? Where was this coming from? "What do you mean, a break?" I asked. She finally looked up, her eyes already watery. "I don't know if this is working anymore. I feel like we've been drifting apart, and I need time to figure out what I want." She hesitated. "Liz says we're mismatched. She thinks I'm holding myself back." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. This was the woman I'd spent nearly half my life with, the woman I was planning to propose to that very night, and now she was saying she didn't know if she wanted me anymore. I took a deep breath and pulled the box out of my pocket. I didn't open it, just held it in my hand and looked at her. "Do you see this?" I said, my voice calm but firm. Her eyes widened when she realized what it was. "Is that—" "Yeah," I said. "This is the ring I was going to give you tonight. I was going to ask you to marry me, Amelia, to spend the rest of your life with me. But now," I shook my head, "you don't deserve it." She started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No, let me finish. I have spent years supporting you, believing in you, and building a future for us. And this is how you repay me, by blindsiding me with some vague break crap over dinner. Thank God you showed me your true colors before we got into anything more serious." Her face crumpled and I could see tears streaming down her cheeks, but I didn't care. I stood up, tucked the box back into my pocket, and grabbed my jacket. "You want a break?" I said, looking her dead in the eyes. "Fine, but don't come crawling back to me when you realize what you've lost." With that, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her sitting there at the table. The drive home was a blur. My mind was racing, flipping through every moment we'd shared and wondering where it had gone wrong. How could she do this to me after everything I'd done for her, everything we'd been through? I kept telling myself I did the right thing by walking away, by standing my ground. I'd given her everything I had, and if that wasn't enough for her, then that was her loss. I wasn't going to beg or chase after her. I knew my worth, and I wasn't about to settle for someone who couldn't see it. I left the ring on the counter as a reminder, not of her but of what I deserved, a partner who appreciated me, who believed in me, and who wouldn't throw everything away on a whim. I decided to distract myself the way everyone does these days, by mindlessly scrolling through social media. Big mistake. I opened Instagram, expecting the usual flood of memes and food pics, but instead the first thing I saw was Liz's story. She'd posted a video of a party and at first it seemed harmless, just people drinking, dancing, and laughing. But then I saw her. There was Amelia, draped over some random guy, clearly hammered. He had his arm around her waist, pulling her close like they were anything but strangers. She was giggling, leaning into him in a way that made my stomach churn. I froze, staring at the screen, hoping I'd imagined it. But no, it was her. And then I noticed something else. I'd been tagged in the story. Liz didn't make it public. She used that sneaky feature in Instagram where only the tagged person knows they've been tagged. It was like she wanted to make sure I saw it without letting anyone else know. For a moment I just sat there, stunned. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was the same woman who told me just hours earlier that she needed a break to figure out what she wanted. And now she was grinding on some random guy, like the ink on her breakup speech wasn't even dry. I felt a wave of anger so strong it made my hands shake. It wasn't just about the guy or the party. It was the fact that Liz of all people was behind this. The same Liz who had spent months tearing me down, planting doubts in Amelia's head and criticizing everything I did. Now she was posting this garbage for me to see. I didn't even know what to do with myself. I closed Instagram, put my phone down, and just sat there, staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to call Amelia right then and there. But I stopped myself. She'd made her choice. And now I was seeing exactly what that choice looked like. A few hours later, my phone lit up with her name. I ignored it at first, but she kept calling. 3, 4, 5 times in a row. Finally, I picked up, more out of curiosity than anything else. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice cold. "Babe, please, let me explain," she sobbed. I could hear the panic in her voice. I didn't say anything, letting her talk. "I didn't know Liz would post that," she cried. "It was a mistake. It meant nothing." I let out a bitter laugh. "A mistake? You hooked up with some random guy right after breaking up with me. That's not a mistake, Amelia. It's a choice. A very deliberate choice." "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "I was drunk and Liz introduced me to him. I didn't even know what was happening until what?" I cut her off. "Until Liz decided to document it for the world to see. You expect me to believe you didn't know what you were doing?" "She manipulated me," Amelia said, her voice breaking. Hearing her try to shift the blame just made me angrier. "You want to blame Liz now? Fine. But you're the one who let this happen. You're the one who decided that the best way to figure out what you want was to wrap yourself around some stranger. That's on you, Amelia, not Liz." There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment I thought she'd hung up, but then I heard her sniffle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was stupid and I interrupted. Don't apologize. You don't get to cry and say you're sorry when you clearly knew what you were doing. You made your bed, now lie in it." She started to say something else, but I didn't care. I hung up and blocked her number. I wasn't in the mood to hear her excuses. Every time I thought about her voice, the way she tried to twist things to make herself the victim, I felt sick. I couldn't even be mad at the guy in Liz's story. He didn't owe me anything. But Amelia, she was supposed to be my partner, my ride or die. Seeing her act like our relationship meant nothing was the final nail in the coffin. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls from our mutual friends. I guess Amelia had told them what happened, or maybe Liz's story made the rounds. Either way, I wasn't in the mood to explain myself. I just sent a blanket message to a few close friends, letting them know I was fine but needed space. It wasn't my job to manage anyone's opinions about the situation. I was drained and honestly just wanted to focus on moving forward. Have any of you been through something like this? I keep replaying everything in my head and wondering if I was too harsh, but at the same time, I can't ignore how deliberate it all felt. Amelia let Liz plant these ideas, let her interfere in our relationship, and then turned around and acted like she was powerless in the situation. And Liz, how do people like her even exist? Who goes out of their way to blow up someone else's life just for fun? I don't know what the next step is. Part of me feels like cutting them both out of my life completely is the only way to protect my sanity. Am I wrong for being this cold about it, or is this just what happens when people show you who they really are? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll keep you updated if anything else happens in the coming days. First off, I want to thank everyone for the advice, support, and yes, even the sarcastic comments on my last post. One of you said something like, Dude, Liz sounds like she's auditioning for America. A's worst co-workers, and honestly I laughed harder than I have in weeks. You guys helped me see that I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did, so thanks for that. Sorry it's taken me a while to update. Life's been a lot between work, sorting through my feelings about Amelia and some unexpected health stuff. We'll get to that. I've been stretched pretty thin, but I'm here now, so let's dive in. In the weeks after the breakup, Amelia tried to reconnect. She'd send these long texts apologizing, saying she didn't know what she was thinking and asking if we could meet up to talk things through. I ignored her at first, but she kept pushing. Eventually, I sent her a short response, Amelia, I've already said everything I needed to. You made your choice and I'm moving on. Please respect that. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. She'd pop up out of nowhere, liking old pictures on Instagram or trying to leave comments like miss this day. I didn't respond to any of it. I'd already wasted enough energy on someone who didn't value me, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had access to my life. Now here's where things take a turn. About 2 weeks ago, I started feeling off, just tired all the time with these weird dizzy spells that wouldn't go away. I chalked it up to stress from everything with Amelia and Liz, but when I almost passed out at work, I figured it was time to get checked out. Long story short, I needed surgery. It wasn't anything super serious or life-threatening, but it still wasn't fun. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it, but my friends and family were supportive. My guys at work even took on extra shifts so I wouldn't have to stress about the while recovering. The surgery itself went fine, and I woke up groggy but okay. I was still coming out of it when I noticed someone sitting by my bed. At first I thought it was one of my friends or family members, but nope, it was Liz. Let me set the scene for you. I'm lying there in one of those awful hospital gowns, barely, able to keep my eyes open, and Liz is sitting there like she's my caretaker or something. She had this concerned look on her face, like we were best friends and she'd been worried sick about me. "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay," she said, leaning forward like we were some kind of cute couple. I was too out of it to fully process what was happening, but I managed to croak out, "What are you doing here?" She gave me this soft smile and said, "I heard you were in the hospital. I just had to make sure you were all right." Had to. Liz, the same Liz who'd spent months trying to sabotage my relationship with Amelia. "Yeah, okay." She kept talking, saying things like, "I feel so bad about everything with Amelia. You didn't deserve that. You're such a good guy." She didn't know what she had. It was like she was trying to rewrite history, painting herself as the supportive friend who'd always been in my corner. At one point, she even reached out to hold my hand. I didn't pull away, mostly because I was too tired to argue, but I could feel the gears turning in her head. Liz wasn't here out of concern. She was here because she saw an opportunity. As I lay there, half-conscious, everything started to click. Liz had been scheming from the start. The little comments she made to Amelia, the constant criticisms of me, the way she inserted herself into our relationship, it was all part of some twisted plan. And now, with Amelia out of the picture, she was trying to slide her way into my life. It's funny how clear things become when you're stuck in a hospital bed with nothing else to do but think. Liz wasn't just a bad friend or a toxic coworker. She was manipulative, calculated, and selfish. She didn't care about me or Amelia. She cared about getting what she wanted, no matter who she had to hurt along the way. Here's the thing about people like Liz: they think they're smarter than everyone else. They think they can manipulate and scheme their way into whatever they want without anyone catching on, but she underestimated me. I had a plan for Liz. I'm not going to say too much right now because I want to make sure it plays out exactly how I envision it. Just know that once I'm fully recovered, she's going to learn what it feels like to be outplayed, so stay tuned, Reddit. I'll update you when the time is right. Let's just say Liz might regret ever stepping foot into that hospital room. Thanks again for all the support. Your advice has been a huge help, and honestly, reading your comments has kept me sane through all this. I'll be back soon with another update. Until then, wish me a speedy recovery. First of all, wow. The response to my last post was insane. I didn't expect so many of you to get invested in this whole situation, but here we are. Thank you for the advice, support, and hilarious comments. I saw someone say, Liz sounds like the type of person who'd fake being nice to. Adopt a cat just to post about it on Instagram, and I couldn't agree more. You guys really get me. I know a lot of you wanted to know what my plan was, so buckle up. Things played out almost exactly how I hoped, and let me just say, it was satisfying. After I was discharged from the hospital and started feeling better, Liz didn't waste any time. She texted me almost every day, starting with these super casual just checking in messages. Stuff like, "Hey, hope you're feeling okay," or "Let me know if you need anything, I'm here for you." At first I ignored her. I wasn't stupid, I knew what she was doing. But after a while I realized that playing along might actually work in my favor. So I started replying, not too much, just enough to keep her on the hook. "Thanks for checking in, I'm doing all right. Appreciate it. Recovery's been slow, but I'm getting there." Liz ate it up. Her texts got longer and more personal, filled with things like, "You're such a strong person, and I don't know how Amelia ever let you go." She started dropping little hints about how she'd always thought I deserved better and how much she admired me. At one point, she even sent me a picture of a casserole she'd made, saying, "I'd love to bring this over if you're up for company." I declined, obviously, but it was clear she was trying to worm her way in. The real shift happened about 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. Liz called me out of nowhere, saying she'd just been thinking about me and wanted to hear my voice. I could practically hear her laying it on thick, talking about how worried she'd been during my surgery and how she'd prayed for me. "Thanks, Liz," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "That means a lot." Then she hit me with, "I feel like this whole thing has brought us closer, you know? Like it's made me realize how much I care about you." I almost laughed. She didn't care about me, she cared about winning, but instead of shutting her down, I leaned into it. "Yeah, I guess it has," I said. That one sentence was all it took. Liz went full throttle after that, texting me constantly, calling me, babying messages, and even suggesting we hang out sometime soon. The thing about Liz is that she's predictable. She thought she was being slick, but everything she did just made her intentions clearer. It wasn't about me, it was about her ego. She wanted to prove she could get me, just like she'd tried to ruin what I had with Amelia. So I let her think she was winning. I started texting her back more often, dropping compliments here and there, and even agreeing to meet up. At that point, I knew she thought she had me wrapped around her finger. When we finally hung out, Liz was all over me. She kept touching my arm, laughing at every little thing I said and dropping hints about how much she valued honesty and loyalty in a relationship. It was honestly exhausting to watch her try so hard, but I played along. Eventually, one thing led to another and yeah, we hooked up. I'm not proud of it, but it was part of the plan. The next morning, I didn't text her back, or the day after that, or the day after that. Liz, of course, started blowing up my phone. "Hey, everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Can we talk?" She called me at least a dozen times, left voicemails, and even sent me a few messages on Instagram. By the end of the week, I had a collection of frantic texts and missed calls from her, all begging me to give her a chance. That's when I made my move. I screenshotted every single text she sent me, along with a few of the voicemails, where she was practically sobbing about how much she cared about me. Then I sent them to Amelia in one big batch. No explanation, no message, just the screenshots. Once they were delivered, I blocked them both on everything. I know some of you are probably thinking, "Dude, that's harsh," but hear me out. Liz had been playing games with my life for months, tearing apart my relationship and manipulating everyone around her. By sending those screenshots to Amelia, I wasn't trying to get her back or start drama. I just wanted the truth to come out. Amelia needed to see who Liz really was and how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I wanted Amelia to see what she'd thrown our relationship away for. And honestly, blocking Liz felt incredible. I felt like I was in control again, like I wasn't just reacting to the chaos she caused. Now I'm sitting back and watching the fallout. Liz wanted control, and instead, I turned the tables. Amelia and Liz might have their own reckoning to deal with now, but I'm done playing their games. And trust me, Reddit, this isn't the last you'll hear from me. Let me recover fully, I'll give them both time to process, and I'll feed you with the updates soon. I promised I'd keep you updated, and oh boy, things escalated fast. Apparently, my little move, sending all of Liz's frantic messages to Amelia, set off a chain reaction I couldn't have planned better if I tried. Here's what I heard through the grapevine. Amelia didn't take kindly to finding out that Liz, her supposed friend, had been scheming behind her back. She confronted Liz at work, and things went from 0 to 100 real quick. From what I've been told, it started with Amelia demanding an explanation, asking Liz why she'd tried to sabotage our relationship, and then swoop up. Liz, being Liz, tried to play innocent. She claimed I was the one pursuing her, and that Amelia was overreacting, but Amelia wasn't buying it. Someone who works with them told me the argument got so loud that the manager had to step in. But it didn't stop there. Apparently, Amelia called Liz out in front of their coworkers, accusing her of being manipulative and trying to ruin her life. Liz fired back, and before anyone could stop them, things got physical. I don't have all the details, but I know it ended with both of them being escorted out by security. The aftermath? They were both fired. Honestly, I don't feel bad for either of them. Liz got exactly what she deserved, and Amelia, well, I can't say she's completely innocent in all this either. She let Liz worm her way into our relationship, and by the time she realized how toxic Liz was, the damage was already done. I don't know what's next for them, but I'm staying far, far away from the drama. I feel like I'm finally in a place where I can breathe. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess. I'll keep you posted if anything else comes up, but for now, I'm just enjoying the peace. It's been a while, and honestly, I thought I'd have nothing left to share. I figured the whole Liz and Amelia drama was over, and I could finally just move on with my life. But of course, people like them don't go quietly. A week after the fallout at their job, Amelia showed up at my door. She looked like a mess, eyes puffy from crying, hair thrown up in a lazy bun, like she didn't even bother trying to look put together. Liz planted all those doubts, she said. She made me think you weren't good enough, but it was all her. I see that now. Please, let's fix this. I just stood there letting her talk. I wasn't angry anymore, I was done. When she finally stopped, I told her, Amelia, I gave you everything and you threw it away. You let someone like Liz tear us apart and now you want to come back. I can't do this anymore. I've moved on. She begged, even cried, but I didn't budge. I wished her the best and closed the door. The very next day, as if on cue, Liz tried her luck. She sent me this long text, first from a random account I didn't recognize, saying how sorry she was and how she'd made mistakes but was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. I ignored it. So she showed up uninvited, all smiles and fake sweetness. I know I messed up, she started, but I know you care about me. We could make this work. I see that now. I didn't even let her finish. I looked her dead in the eye and said, you both made your choices. Now live with them. Then I walked back inside and shut the door in her face. That was the last time I saw either of them. Since then, life has been peaceful. My business is thriving. I've even expanded it and hired more people. I've been spending more time with my friends and focusing on myself, which has been long overdue. And yeah, I've started dating someone new. She's amazing, down to earth, kind, and most importantly, she actually appreciates me for who I am. She doesn't care that I run a plumbing business instead of sitting behind a fancy desk in some corporate office. She's supportive, honest, and makes me feel like I'm enough exactly as I am. As for Amelia and Liz, last I heard, they're both still jobless and blaming each other for everything. Mutual friends say they barely speak now, and when they do, it's just to throw insults. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little amused by the irony of it all. They destroyed each other trying to come after me, and I walked away without a scratch. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that you've got to pay attention to the people you let into your life. Not just your partner, but their friends too. Sometimes the wrong influences can do more damage than you realize. And for anyone who's been through something similar, find someone who values you for who you are, not for who they think you should be. Don't settle for someone who listens to people like Liz or lets doubts creep in because of someone else's opinion. You deserve better than that. Life's good now, and I plan to keep it that way. Story 2: Jake and I had been together for 3 years. The first 2 years were fine, but the last year, pure psychological warfare. He started checking my phone, questioning where I was going, who I was talking to. He'd get irrationally jealous if male co-workers texted me about work stuff. He'd make jokes about me being unfaithful in front of our friends. When I'd get upset, he'd say I was overreacting and that guilty people get defensive. The worst part was I never cheated. Not even close. I was completely faithful while he was projecting his behavior onto me. It was Teresa who first caught him. She'd been my best friend since high school. Basically like a sister. One night, while Jake was at work, she came over after I mentioned another one of his wild accusations. I showed her text where he was questioning why I got home 15 minutes late from grocery shopping and suggesting I was meeting someone. Teresa got this weird look on her face and showed me her phone. Jake's dating profile, active that very day. His bio even said he was single and looking for fun. Teresa confessed she'd suspected for weeks. A friend of hers had matched with him but recognized him as my boyfriend from pictures on my social media. Teresa had been gathering evidence before telling me because she wanted to make sure it wasn't just a misunderstanding. That night, we formulated a plan. Teresa would create a fake profile and try to match with him to see how far he'd go. Teresa matched with him within hours. He didn't even hesitate. Their chats were vile. He told her he was single, complained about his psycho ex-me, who he was trying to break up with, but who wouldn't take the hint. When Teresa asked why he didn't just end it, he wrote, "She pays half the rent and does all the cooking and cleaning. Why give that up until I find something better?" He started sending her screenshots of conversations with other girls he was seeing. In these chats, they would make fun of me. He called me the most hideous creature and something so repulsive to these women. There was a message from Jake saying, "I almost gag when she tries to kiss me." And some girl responded, "You're such a saint for putting up with her. I would have left ages ago." Jake wrote back, "It's complicated, but not for long, I promise." These were messages to multiple women, all while he was accusing me cheating. All while I was cooking his favorite meals, doing his laundry, and trying desperately to prove my loyalty to him. I didn't confront him right away. Teresa and I decided we needed more than just evidence. We needed a plan, not to get him back, but to absolutely destroy him. The next few weeks, I played the perfect girlfriend while Teresa continued chatting with him through the fake profile. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye in the mornings. I still cooked his meals and did his laundry. I even apologized when he accused me of flirting with the delivery guy who literally just handed me our food and left. All the while I was plotting. One night, Jake came home late smelling like unfamiliar perfume. When I casually mentioned it, he got furious and said I was being paranoid and that maybe I should talk to someone about my insecurities. He said maybe I was depressed that I hadn't been myself lately. I just smiled and apologized, all while mentally adding this to my list of reasons he deserved what was coming. I went through our finances. We had a joint account for bills, but Jake also had his own savings account that he was so proud of. He was always talking about how disciplined he was with money, how he was saving for our future. What a joke. Looking at our bank statements, I could see large withdrawals on nights he claimed he was working late. Expensive restaurants, hotel charges, gift shop purchases. That's when I knew exactly where to hit him. His ego and his wallet. I remembered my cousin Vicky. Everyone always said we looked similar except she was the prettier version of me, thanks family. She had the same dark hair and eyes as me, but was taller with a better figure as my mom would constantly remind me. She was a model in college and still turned everywhere. And she owed me a favor after I helped her through a really rough breakup last year. I called Vicky and Teresa for an emergency meeting and told them my full situation. Vicky was furious on my behalf. She said what Jake was doing was emotional abuse, not just cheating. And she was right. Teresa showed Vicky all the evidence she'd gathered, and Vicky couldn't believe someone could be so cruel while pretending to be the victim. By the end of our 3-hour conversation, I wasn't just angry. I was calculating, cold, ready. That night, as I watched Jake texting on his phone with that stupid little smirk on his face, probably telling some other woman how hideous I looked while accusing me of texting someone, I made my decision. I had my plan. Something that would make Jake regret every single word he ever said about me. Something that would hit him exactly where it would hurt the most. Teresa and Vicky were all in, and together we were about to teach him the lesson of a lifetime. First update. Our plan was like something out of a heist movie, except it was real and I was living it. We decided Vicky would accidentally run into Jake at his gym. He went a fitness club downtown every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork, supposedly for training sessions, but now I suspected he was just trolling for women. Vicky got a guest pass through a friend who was a member. We studied Jake's routine. He always posted workout selfies with timestamps, what a predictable dumbass, and knew exactly when to position her on the treadmill next to his favorite bench press. The first day of Operation Takedown, Vicky wore these insane leggings that made even me do a double take. She texted me from the gym. Target acquired. He hasn't stopped staring since I walked in. What happened next was so predictable it was almost boring. Jake accidentally bumped into her while getting a towel, started a conversation about protein shakes or some bullshit, asked for her number to share workout tips. By that evening, he was already texting her. I sat with Vicky on my couch reading every message, my stomach in knots. Teresa brought wine and takeout, insisting we needed fuel for the psychological warfare ahead. The texts were exactly what you'd expect. Compliments about how fit she looked, questions about whether she was single, suggestions they should. Grab a protein shake sometime. Here's the kicker. Jake had no idea Vicky was my cousin. We look similar, but not in an obvious way unless you're really paying attention. And Jake never really paid attention to me anymore. The plan was simple but devastating. Vicky would date him, get him completely hooked, make him spend obscene amounts of money on her, and then eventually we'd reveal everything. Meanwhile, I'd continue playing the unsuspecting girlfriend while secretly enjoying watching him dig his own grave financially and emotionally. Vicky and Jake had their first date 3 days later. He told me he had a work event that night. I kissed him goodbye, told him to have fun, and then immediately drove to Teresa's apartment where we tracked the whole evening through Vicky's play-by-play texts. He took her to this ridiculously expensive restaurant he'd never taken me to, despite my hints about wanting to go there for our anniversary. Vicky said he ordered the priciest wine on the menu, bragged about his important job and his savings account. He even had the nerve to mention he was practically single and wrapping up a dead-end relationship. When Vicky sent us a bathroom selfie from the restaurant, I almost threw up. It was surreal seeing my boyfriend on a date with my cousin while I was sitting on my best friend's couch eating popcorn and plotting revenge. Teresa kept reminding me it was all just evidence of what a piece of shit he was, and that soon he'd pay for everything. Literally, over the next few weeks, Jake became obsessed with Vicky. He started canceling our plans to see her, staying out later, coming home with this smug look on his face like he had some amazing secret, all while Vicky reported back everything to me and Teresa. The money spending started small. Dinners, small gifts, concert tickets, but Vicky was strategic. She'd mentioned some jewelry she liked just casually, while they were walking past a store. Next thing you know, Jake's dropping $500 on earrings to impress her. She'd talk about a weekend getaway spot she'd always wanted to visit, and suddenly Jake was booking hotels and making plans. The best part, Vicky would accidentally leave these gifts at his place claiming she didn't want to lose them, but really so he couldn't ask for them back later. Then she'd bring them straight to me. I now had a collection of expensive jewelry, designer bags, and even a fucking watch he bought her. All purchased with money he claimed he was saving for our future. As for the trips and experiences, Vicky had a system. She'd get Jake to book everything on his credit card. Then she'd find some excuse for why she needed cash for her half, which he'd immediately refuse because he was trying to impress her. Then after the weekend, she'd Venmo me her fund money from Jake's cash. Sometimes I'd use it for myself, but mostly I'd split it with Teresa and Vicky for what we called our revenge fund. We were building quite the nest egg. One weekend, Jake told me he had a business conference in a beach town 2 hours away. What he actually had was a romantic weekend with Vicky at a luxury resort. Vicky somehow convinced him she needed $800 in spending money for spa treatments and shopping. He handed it over without question. That money funded my spa day with Teresa at a local place while he was gone. We got the works, massages, facials, mani-pedis, all on Jake's dime. We even posted pictures, knowing Jake never looked at my social media anymore. The whole time, Jake was getting bolder with his lies to me. He started working late 4 nights a week, had business trips on weekends. Once he even claimed his mom was sick so he could take Vicky to a wine country resort. His mom called me that same weekend to ask if we wanted to come over for dinner. I made up some excuse about Jake having food poisoning. Keeping up my end of the charade was exhausting. I had to pretend everything was normal. Had to keep cooking his meals, doing his laundry, smiling when he kissed me with the same fucking lips he'd been using on my cousin. Things got more complicated when Jake started telling Vicky about his horrible girlfriend, meaning me. Vicky would record their conversations, legal in our state with one-party consent, and send them to me. Hearing him call me desperate and clingy and totally oblivious made me want to burn his entire life to the ground. The worst was when he told Vicky he couldn't wait to be done with the dead weight, and that the only reason he hadn't broken up with me yet was because it's just so convenient having someone split the bills and do all the household shit. He literally called me his Roomba that also pays rent. When I heard that recording, I smashed a glass against the wall when Jake wasn't home. Teresa had to come over and help me clean it up before he got back. But even through the pain, the benefits of our scheme were starting to pile up. Vicky convinced Jake to buy her a new iPhone because hers kept dying. She immediately gave it to me since my screen was cracked. She got him to buy designer shoes in her size, which was actually my size. She even managed to get him to pay for a weekend yoga retreat that she never attended. I went with Teresa instead, laughing the entire time about how Jake was funding my relaxation while believing I was at home doing his laundry. Around the 2-month mark, Vicky started phase 2 of our plan. She began talking about how stressed she was at work, how she needed a real vacation. She strategically mentioned places she'd always wanted to visit. Coincidentally, places I had mentioned wanting to go. One night while on a date with Jake, she broke down in fake tears about how she'd never been able to afford a real vacation. Jake, trying to be the hero, immediately offered to help. Before the night was over, he'd booked a weekend trip to this amazing mountain resort about 3 hours away. All expenses paid. Here's where it got interesting. The day before the trip, Vicky called Jake sobbing. Her grandmother was in the hospital and she couldn't possibly go away that weekend. Jake was devastated, especially since the reservation was non-refundable. Vicky, being the thoughtful person she is, suggested he take the trip anyway since he'd been working so hard. Jake reluctantly agreed. The minute Jake told me he was going on a guy's fishing trip that weekend, his cover story to me, I texted Vicky and Teresa. The plan was in motion. Vicky had already secretly given me the reservation details. As soon as Jake left for work the next morning, I packed my bags, picked up Teresa, and we drove to the exact resort Jake had booked for his weekend with Vicky. We checked in using the reservation Jake had paid for. The front desk didn't even blink when I gave them my ID. The reservation was under Jake's name but didn't specify guest names. We spent the entire weekend in luxury. Spa treatments, gourmet meals, hiking with a private guide, all courtesy of Jake's credit card. We even ordered room service and charged it to the meanwhile. Jake was texting Vicky about how disappointed he was, but how he was making the best of it on his fishing trip with imaginary friends. We took so many pictures that weekend, being careful not to post them anywhere Jake might see. Those photos went into what we called our evidence locker, the folder we'd eventually use to show Jake just how thoroughly he'd been played. When I got home Sunday night, Jake was already there telling me about all the huge fish he and his buddies caught. I nodded and asked questions, acting interested while secretly replaying the memory of soaking in a hot tub with a glass of expensive champagne he had paid for. The pattern continued for another month. One of my favorite scams was the birthday present scheme. Vicky mentioned her best friend's birthday was coming up, and she wanted to get her something special but was short on cash. Jake immediately offered to help. He ended up buying an expensive designer bag that Vicky had picked out, which she promptly gave to me for my birthday, which was actually the following week. I carried that bag everywhere, including on dates with Jake. He complimented it once, saying it looked expensive. I just smiled and said Teresa had gotten it for me, technically not a lie. His savings account was dwindling, and he'd started complaining to me about unexpected expenses at work and how we might need to tighten our belts for a while. The audacity. Meanwhile, things between Jake and Vicky were getting more serious from his perspective. He started talking about introducing her to his friends, maybe even his family. Vicky skillfully deflected, always keeping him at that perfect distance, close enough to keep spending money on her, but not so close that their relationship would move forward in any meaningful way. What Jake didn't know was that we were building up to something big. Vicky had started planting seeds about a luxury vacation she'd always dreamed of taking, some tropical resort with private bungalows over the water. Places where rooms cost like $1,000 a night. Jake predictably took the bait, started looking at options, trying to figure out how to afford it. That's when we discovered he'd been moving money from our joint account into his private one to fund his double life. Money that was supposed to be for our bills, our future. He'd been stealing from me to romance my cousin. Finding those transfers was like being punched in the stomach all over again. But it also made me more determined than ever to finish this. As the third month of our scheme came to a close, Jake was planning this extravagant vacation, draining his savings account for deposits and buying new luggage and ridiculous tropical outfits. Little did he know, it was all leading to the final phase of our plan. But we weren't quite ready to spring the trap, not yet. We had at least one more month of making him pay, literally. The best part? He had no idea what was coming. He still thought I was completely oblivious, still cooking his meals and doing his laundry like the perfect girlfriend. Still believed Vicky was falling for him as hard as he was falling for her. Still believed he was the one in control of the situation. But the control was all ours. And soon, very soon, he was going to learn just how badly he'd been played. Second update. Month 4 of Operation Destroy Jake's bank account was when things got really interesting. By this point, Vicky had Jake wrapped so tightly around her finger that he'd started getting sloppy with his lies to me. He'd work late, but forget to text that he wouldn't be home for dinner. He'd leave receipts in his pockets that I'd find while doing laundry. Once he even called me by Vicky's name when he was half asleep. I had to bite my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Meanwhile, our revenge fund had grown to almost $4,000 in cash from all the money Vicky had extracted from him and shared with us. Teresa had benefited too. We'd take turns with the spa packages and restaurant gift cards Vicky would get out of him. One night, Jake came home looking stressed. He sat me down for a serious talk about our finances. Apparently, he was experiencing some temporary cash flow issues and needed me to cover more of our shared expenses for a while. Could I possibly pay the full rent next month instead of just my half? And maybe handle the utilities too? He promised he'd pay me back once his work bonus came through. I almost lost it right there. This asshole was spending thousands on my cousin while asking me to cover his basic living expenses. But I kept my cool, nodded sympathetically, and agreed to help out. What choice did his oblivious girlfriend have? As soon as he left the room, I texted Vicky and Teresa. Phase. Escalation starts now. The next day, Vicky called Jake in tears. Her car had broken down and she needed $600 for repairs ASAP. Jake, despite having just told me he was broke, somehow found the money within hours. Vicky took the cash, thanked him profusely, and then split it with me and Teresa. We went shopping while her perfectly functional car sat in my apartment complex's guest parking. But the real goldmine was the tropical vacation planning. Vicky had convinced Jake to book this ridiculously expensive resort in Bora Bora. Jake was struggling to come up with the money, but Vicky kept sending him pictures of the place, talking about how it would be the most romantic week of their lives. I watched from the shadows as Jake started selling things to fund this trip. His prized vintage guitar collection that he'd never let me even touch, sold on eBay. The expensive watch his grandfather left him, pawned. His crypto investments he was so proud of, liquidated at a loss. All while telling me we needed to cut back on luxuries like my fucking morning coffee and Netflix subscription. One night while Jake was in the shower, I checked his phone and saw he'd taken out a personal loan for $15,000. The absolute madness. Going into debt for a woman he'd known for less than 4 months while telling his girlfriend of 3 years that we needed to economize. While all this was happening, I was quietly preparing my exit strategy. I'd found a new apartment with Teresa's help, affordable and with good security. I'd been moving my important documents and sentimental items there little by little. I'd started redirecting my mail to a P.O. box. I'd even opened a new bank account at a different bank where Jake had no connections. The stress of maintaining the charade was getting to me, though. playing the supportive, oblivious girlfriend while watching Jake destroy his finances for another woman, even if that woman was my cousin working on my behalf, was exhausting. Some nights I'd lie awake next to him, fighting the urge to scream in his face about what a pathetic, disloyal piece of shit he was. Teresa noticed I was struggling and suggested we treat ourselves to a mental health day, using some of our revenge fund money. We booked a day at this amazing hot springs resort, about an hour outside the city. The irony, it was a place Jake had once promised to take me for our anniversary, but claimed we couldn't afford. The day at the hot springs was exactly what I needed. Soaking in the mineral pools, getting massages, drinking champagne at 11 a.m., all while knowing Jake was at work. Stressed about money, completely unaware that he was funding my relaxation. It felt like poetic justice. When I got home that evening, Jake was already there, which was unusual. He looked nervous, pacing around the living room. My heart dropped. Had he somehow found out about our scheme? But no, it was something else entirely. He sat me down and told me he'd been doing some serious thinking about our relationship. This was it. He was going to break up with me. After all these months of cheating and lying, he was finally going to end things so he could be with Vicky openly. I prepared my fake surprise face, already mentally rehearsing how I'd call Vicky and Teresa the minute he left to tell them we needed to accelerate our timeline. But that's not what happened at all. Instead, this delusional asshole got down on one knee and pulled out a ring box. A fucking engagement ring. He started saying how he'd been distant lately because he was working through some personal issues, but had realized I was the one he wanted to spend his life with. That sometimes people don't appreciate what they have until they almost lose it. That he wanted us to start fresh. I was literally speechless. This was his plan, to lock me down with an engagement while continuing to see Vicky on the side. Or was he planning to break things off with her? Either way, it was the most pathetic, desperate move I could imagine. The ring was tiny, nothing like what he'd once promised he'd get me someday. Clearly his finances were in worse shape than I'd thought. I stood there frozen, my mind racing through options. If I said yes, it would buy me more time to extract maximum revenge. If I said no, the game would be over too soon. I did what any self-respecting woman in my position would do. I burst into tears, not entirely fake, they were tears of rage, and told him I needed time to think. That his distant behavior had hurt me deeply and I wasn't sure if we could fix things. That I loved him, but needed space to consider his proposal. Jake was crushed but tried to hide it. He said he understood that he'd give me all the time I needed. He even suggested I go stay with my parents for a few days to clear my head. I almost laughed out loud. He was trying to get me out of the apartment so he could have Vicky over. I pretended to agree, packed a bag, and went straight to Teresa's place. The minute I arrived, I called Vicky and filled her in on this insane new development. She couldn't believe it either. What kind of psychopath proposes to one woman while actively planning an expensive romantic vacation with another? We decided to use this new situation to our advantage. Vicky would act especially needy and demanding in the coming days, really pushing Jake to his financial limits. Meanwhile, I'd string him along about the proposal, asking for time and space, while actually using that time to finalize my escape plan. Over the next week, I stayed at Teresa's but maintained daily contact with Jake. I'd text him things like, "still thinking and need more time," while he responded with increasingly desperate messages about how much he loved me and how he'd do anything to make our relationship work. 10 days after the proposal, Jake called me sounding stressed. He needed to talk to me about something important. In person. My heart raced. Had he somehow figured out our scheme? I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop the next day, then immediately called Vicky and Teresa for an emergency strategy session. We decided I'd wear a tiny microphone. Teresa had one from her journalism days, so they could listen from Teresa's car parked nearby. If things went south, they'd be right there to intervene. We also prepared a cover story in case Jake had somehow discovered what we were doing. What Jake wanted to talk about wasn't our scheme at all. It was money. He confessed he'd made some bad financial decisions recently and was in serious trouble. He'd maxed out his credit cards, taken out loans, and even borrowed from friends. He needed my help to get back on track. Specifically, he wanted me to take out a loan in my name to consolidate his debts. He promised he'd pay it back, that it would only be temporary. He even suggested it could be the first step in our life together, proving we were a team who helped each other through tough times. I sat there stunned at the audacity. This man had spent thousands on another woman, lied to my face for months, and now wanted me to go into debt to solve his financial problems. Problems he'd created by trying to impress my cousin. It took everything in me not to throw my hot coffee in his face. Instead, I told him I needed to think about it, that it was a big decision, that I was still processing his proposal, and this added a whole new complication. I could see the desperation in his eyes as I left, promising to let him know soon. The minute I got back to Teresa's car, we all burst out laughing. The sheer nerve of this man was almost impressive. Vicky immediately started planning the next phase. She would tell Jake she'd gotten an unexpected bonus at work and could now contribute significantly to their vacation. All he needed to do was complete the bookings, and she'd reimburse him for her share. Of course, that reimbursement would never come, but Jake didn't know that. Over the next few days, Jake secured the final bookings for their Bora Bora trip. He'd had to borrow money from his brother to cover the last few $1,000s, but it was done. All non-refundable, all booked under both their names. The vacation was scheduled to start in exactly 2 weeks. Their flights would leave on a Friday morning, which meant we had 12 days to execute the final phase of our plan. And Jake had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. Last update. Those final 12 days before Jake's romantic Bora Bora getaway, lol, were some of the most stressful and exhilarating of my life. We had everything planned down to the minute, but there was always the risk he'd figure something out or that Vicky would slip up somehow. Meanwhile, Jake was getting increasingly desperate about money. He kept texting me about that loan, saying things like, "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, and this is about our future together." The audacity of this man thinking I'd go into debt for him while he was planning a luxury vacation with another woman. I mean, technically it was my cousin working on my behalf, but still. I finally agreed to meet him for dinner to discuss our relationship and the loan situation. I chose this mid-range restaurant where we'd had our first date, partly for the symbolism and partly because I knew he couldn't afford anything fancier at this point. I spent extra time getting ready, making sure I looked amazing. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, wearing this red dress he'd always loved. When I showed up, Jake's face lit up with hope. He'd been worried I was going to end things, but my appearance suggested otherwise. We ordered food and made awkward small talk while he kept glancing at my left hand, noticing I wasn't wearing the sad little engagement ring he'd given me. Finally, I cut to the chase. I told him I'd been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship, about the future, about what I really wanted. His face got all serious and expectant. Then I dropped the first bomb. I told him I'd looked into the loan he wanted me to take out and could probably get approved for $25,000. The relief on his face was instant, like a drowning man spotting a lifeguard. He reached for my hand across the table, squeezing it while saying how much this meant to him, how he'd definitely pay me back, how this proved we were meant to be. I smiled and said there was just one condition. I needed access to all his financial records before taking out the loan. Bank statements, credit card bills, everything. Just so I could understand exactly what I was getting into. His face froze. I kept my expression innocent, like this was a perfectly reasonable request from someone about to take on their partner's debt. He stammered something about how that wasn't necessary, that he'd handle all the repayments, that I shouldn't worry my pretty head about the details. I insisted, saying this was non-negotiable, that if we were going to build a life together, there needed to be complete transparency. Jake looked like he was going to be sick. He excused himself to the bathroom, taking his phone with him. When Jake returned to the table, he had composed himself. He agreed to show me his financial records soon, but said right now the most important thing was processing the loan application because he had some urgent deadlines. I nodded sympathetically while mentally adding this to the mountain of evidence of what a manipulative ass he was. I told him I'd go to the bank on Monday. This was Friday evening, to start the application process. His relief was palpable. Little did he know I had zero intention of getting him a penny. Over the weekend, Jake was extra attentive and loving, bringing me coffee in bed, suggesting we watch my favorite movies, even cleaning the apartment without being asked. All while texting Vicky constantly about their upcoming trip, which was now just 9 days away. Monday morning came, and I told Jake I had an appointment at the bank. I dressed in my most professional outfit and left the apartment while he wished me luck. Where I actually went was to meet Teresa and Vicky at our new favorite coffee shop to finalize the plan. When I got home that evening, Jake was waiting expectantly. I told him the bank needed more time to review my application, but that things looked positive. He tried to hide his disappointment and stress, but I could see his hands shaking slightly as he hugged me. 4 days before the trip, Vicky played her MasterCard. She called Jake crying, saying her grandmother had just been hospitalized and she might need to fly home to see her instead of going to Bora Bora. Jake panicked, started offering solutions. Could they postpone the trip? No, non-refundable. Could her grandmother wait? She was shocked he would suggest that. What if he went with her to see grandmother instead? No, family only during health crises. After letting him stew for 24 hours, Vicky called back with good news. Grandmother was stable, and the doctor said there was no need for immediate concern. The Bora Bora trip could proceed as planned. Jake was so relieved he actually sent her flowers as a feel-better gift for grandmother. Flowers that were delivered to my new apartment, where Vicky was actually staying half the time now as we prepared for the final phase. 2 days before the trip, Jake was a complete mess. The bank, aka me, still hadn't approved the loan he desperately needed. He was trying to pack for Bora Bora while hiding his suitcase in the closet whenever I was home. He was juggling texts between me and Vicky, trying to keep both relationships afloat. It was almost sad how pathetic he'd become. Almost. The night before the big trip, I told Jake I needed to talk to him about something important. His face went pale. He probably thought it was about the engagement or the loan. Instead, I told him I was going to stay with Teresa for a few days because I needed space to think about our future. His relief was visible. This solved his problem of how to leave for the airport without me asking questions. What Jake didn't know was that, while he was at work the previous day, I'd already moved most of my remaining belongings to my new apartment. All that was left were some clothes and toiletries I could easily fit in one suitcase, which I packed while he was in the shower. As I was about to leave, Jake hugged me tightly and said he hoped I'd have an answer about our future when he got back from his business trip on Sunday. The fact that he could lie to my face so convincingly after 3 years together still astounded me. The moment I closed the apartment door, our final countdown began. Operation Complete Destruction was officially underway. I went straight to Teresa's place where Vicky was waiting. We ordered pizza, opened champagne, and went over our plan one last time. Tomorrow morning, Jake would head to the airport thinking he was about to have the romantic getaway of a lifetime with his gorgeous secret girlfriend. Instead, he was about to have the worst day of his life. We barely slept that night, too wired with anticipation. At 6 a.m., Vicky texted Jake, "Good morning, so excited for today, can't wait to see you at the airport." Jake responded immediately, just finishing packing, "See you at Terminal 3 at 8:3, can't believe we're finally doing this." At 7 a.m., we watched through the apartment building's security app as Jake left with his suitcase, looking happier than I'd seen him in months. The minute his car pulled away, Teresa, Vicky, and I got into Teresa's car and headed to the airport ourselves. Not to fly anywhere, just to witness what was about to unfold. We arrived at Terminal 3 around 8:15 and positioned ourselves at a cafe with a perfect view of the check-in counters. Jake arrived at 8:25, looking around eagerly for Vicky. He checked his phone, texted her, then went to stand in the check-in line for his flight. At exactly 8:45, when Jake would be approaching the counter, Vicky sent him the message we'd carefully crafted the night before. It was a selfie of me, Vicky, and Teresa together, all smiling widely with middle fingers up. Beneath it, Vicky wrote, "Surprise, asshole, hope you enjoy your $17,000 vacation for one, your girlfriend knows everything." We watched from our hiding spot as Jake received the message. He froze in the middle of the check-in line, staring at his phone. His face went from confusion to shock to horror in seconds. He looked around wildly as if expecting to see us. Tried calling Vicky immediately, straight to voicemail because she'd blocked his number. Tried calling me, same result. Jake stepped out of the line, still staring at his phone in disbelief. He slumped onto a nearby bench, frantically typing, probably sending desperate be delivered. We watched this go on for almost 20 minutes before he finally got up and walked zombie-like toward the exit, dragging his suitcase behind him. Jake spent the entire day calling us from different numbers, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. We ignored them all, focusing instead on phase 2 of our final plan. I'd also left a carefully worded letter on the kitchen table outlining exactly what we knew, along with printed copies of some of his worst messages about me, including the ones where he called me the most hideous thing and his Roomba that also pays rent. The letter explained that if he contacted me or Vicky again with any threats or harassment, the entire evidence folder would be sent to his parents, his boss, and posted publicly. Was all of this strictly necessary? Probably not. Was it deliciously satisfying after months of his psychological abuse and cheating? Absolutely. That evening, Jake showed up at the apartment to find he couldn't get in. The security camera caught his meltdown in the hallway as he realized just how thoroughly he'd been played. Over the next few days, Jake cycled through every emotion possible. He sent emails begging for forgiveness, then angry ones calling us crazy bitches, then pitiful ones about how he'd lose his job if he couldn't repay his debts. Exactly 1 week after the airport incident, we executed the final part of our plan. Vicky, Teresa, and I booked ourselves into a gorgeous local spa resort for the weekend, paid for with the last of our fund money. While soaking in hot tubs and getting massages, we each posted a single photo to our social media accounts. Predictably, this triggered another round of desperate messages from Jake, now using his brother's phone since we'd blocked all his numbers. He couldn't understand how we could be so cruel and heartless. He claimed what he'd done wasn't that bad compared to how we destroyed his life. The lack of self-awareness was truly spectacular. In the months since then, Jake has tried various tactics to contact me. He even sent a letter to my parents' house. They forwarded it to me unopened. What he hasn't done is repay any of the money he took from our joint account, or explain to his family and friends why he suddenly had to move back in with his parents at 30. As for the financial aftermath, Jake is apparently working 2 jobs trying to pay off his debts. The vacation packages, flights, and hotel reservations were all non-refundable, just as Vicky had insisted when booking. His credit score is destroyed. His savings are gone. Meanwhile, I'm thriving in my new apartment. I've been promoted at work. I'm wearing designer clothes and jewelry that technically Jake paid for. I'm planning a real vacation with Teresa and Vicky next summer. One that we will pay for with our own money, because we're not pathetic cheaters who have to manipulate people to get what we want. Last week, Jake showed up at my apartment building at 3 a.m., clearly drunk, crying into my Ring doorbell camera about how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and would do anything for another chance. I watched the live feed from my phone, cozy in bed, and did the only reasonable thing, sent the video to Vicky and Teresa so we could all laugh about it together, then forwarded it to building security to have him removed from the property. 20 missed calls later, he finally gave up. I slept like a baby that night knowing he was suffering while I was absolutely thriving. That, my friends, is what you call karma. And it is beautiful. Story 3. Your sister's education has to come first, Dad said, refusing to pay for my college. I left quietly that night. 6 years later, my mom begged to reconcile. I still remember the exact moment I realized I wasn't wanted. I was 7 years old standing in our cramped kitchen watching my mother fuss over my sister's science project. The blue ribbon they were certain she'd win was already sitting on the counter, a celebration before the victory. Mom, I said, holding up my own project, a carefully constructed diorama of the solar system I'd spent 3 days making. Can you help me with this part? She didn't even look up, just waved her hand dismissively in my direction. Not now, can't you see I'm busy with Betty's project? Go figure it out yourself. It was such a small moment, unremarkable really. But sometimes the smallest cuts leave the deepest scars. That night I sat on my bed and carefully glued the final pieces of my project together. Alone, as I had been for most of my childhood, the difference between Betty and me wasn't talent or intelligence. It was simply that she mattered and I didn't. I stared at my completed solar system, It was good, maybe even great, but it didn't matter because no one would notice. No one ever did. Growing up in the shadow of a golden child is like being a ghost in your own home. You're there, but not really, seen, but not truly acknowledged. I became an expert at making myself smaller, quieter, less needy. I learned that the path of least resistance was often invisibility. Betty was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, naturally charismatic. She commanded attention without even trying while I scrambled for scraps of recognition that rarely came. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. A constant reminder that I was the family disappointment, the afterthought, the mistake. By high school, I'd accepted my role as the family scapegoat. When something went wrong, it was my fault. When something went right, it was despite me. My parents attended every one of Betty's soccer games but couldn't be bothered to come to my honors night. They threw elaborate parties for her birthdays while mine passed with barely a mention. I tried God how I tried to earn their love. I got straight A's, joined clubs, won academic competitions, but the goalposts kept moving. Nothing was ever enough. The breaking point came during my senior year. I'd been accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, not Harvard like Betty, but still impressive, something to be proud of. I showed my father the acceptance letter, a flicker of hope still alive that this time finally he would be proud. He glanced at it, then handed it back to me with a sigh. "Princeton, that's going to be expensive." He shook his head. "We're already stretched thin with Betty's tuition. Maybe you should consider community college instead." My chest tightened, my hands trembled. The careful walls I'd built around my heart began to crack. "But I got a scholarship," I said, my voice small, "and I could work part-time." My father's expression hardened. "Don't be selfish. Your sister's education has to come first. She's going to do something important with her life." Unlike me, the words hung unspoken between us. That night my mother found me packing. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching me fold clothes into a duffel bag. "I'm leaving," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. She laughed. "And go where? Don't be dramatic." I continued packing, not looking at her. "I got a job offer from one of my professors tutoring online. It won't pay much, but it'll be enough." "You're being ridiculous," she said, her voice sharpening. "After everything we've done for you," I finally looked up. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom's? Name one thing." She stared at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. In that moment, I saw the truth reflected in her eyes. She couldn't think of a single thing. "You've ruined this family," she finally said. "Your sister's worried about her finals, and here you are, creating drama." Something inside me broke, or perhaps it finally mended. The last thread tying me to them snapped, and suddenly I was free. I didn't say another word, didn't need to. I finished packing, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. The first year on my own was brutal. I deferred my Princeton acceptance, unable to afford it even with the scholarship. Instead, I moved into a tiny studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a shower that only ran cold. I worked 3 jobs tutoring online, waitressing on weekends, stocking shelves at a bookstore at night. I was exhausted constantly, but there was a strange peace in the exhaustion. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself, not trying to earn love that would never come. No one from my family called, not on my birthday, not during holidays, not once. It hurt at first, the finality of it. The confirmation that I had been right all along, they didn't miss me, but gradually, that hurt transformed into something else. Determination, resilience, a fierce desire to prove to myself, if no one else, that I was worthy. The tutoring job became my lifeline. I was good at it, breaking down complex ideas into manageable pieces, making the intimidating accessible. My client list grew through word of mouth. One student became 5, then 20, then 100. But the path wasn't without its thorns. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what I was trying to accomplish. I had no safety net, no room for failure. One bad month could mean eviction. One serious illness could derail everything. The isolation was suffocating at times. I'd walk past restaurants filled with families laughing together, sharing stories, and feel a holiness in my chest that threatened to consume me. In those moments, doubt would creep in. Had I made a mistake? Should I have swallowed my pride and stayed? Then there was the constant battle with imposter syndrome. Who was I to think I could build something from nothing? I had no business degree, no formal training in education, just an intuitive understanding of how people learn and a desperate need to survive. My first attempt at creating an educational website crashed spectacularly. I'd spent 3 months of savings on a developer who disappeared halfway through the project, leaving me with unusable code and an empty bank account. I sat on my apartment floor that night, surrounded by bills I couldn't pay, and felt the full weight of my aloneness. There was no one to call, no one to ask for help. No one cared whether I succeeded or failed. The temptation to give up was overwhelming, to admit defeat, to acknowledge that maybe my parents had been right about me all along. But somewhere in the darkness of that moment, I found a spark of stubborn defiance. The same spark that had carried me out the door 6 years earlier. I wasn't going to let them be right about me. I taught myself to code, stayed up until 3 a.m. night after night, eyes burning from staring at tutorials, fingers cramping from practice exercises. I made mistakes, so many mistakes. The website crashed constantly, payment processing failed, students couldn't access their materials. Each setback felt like confirmation of my inadequacy, but with every failure came learning, with every obstacle, innovation. I built a website, created custom study materials, developed a unique teaching methodology that got results. 2 years after walking out of my parents' house, I had a waiting list for my services and was charging premium rates. By year 3, I had hired other tutors, but managing people brought its own challenges. I had no experience as a leader, no model for healthy workplace dynamics. My first hire quit after 3 months, telling me I was too controlling, too perfectionistic, too much like my father, though she didn't know to make that comparison. The realization shook me to my core. Was I recreating the very environment I'd fled? Had I internalized more than I realized? I spent weeks in a spiral of self-doubt, questioning everything about the business I was building. But unlike my parents, I was willing to change, to grow, to learn from my mistakes. I hired a business coach, joined entrepreneur groups, read every leadership book I could find, and slowly, painfully, I began to develop my own management style, one based on empathy, collaboration, and mutual respect. By year 4, I had launched an online learning platform that was attracting attention from education technology investors, but with that attention came pressure. Suddenly, there were people watching me, evaluating me, waiting for me to fail. The old insecurities roared back to life, the feeling of being judged, the fear of not being good enough, the certainty that once people really saw me, they would reject me just as my family had. I almost sabotaged a major investment deal, convinced they would pull out once they realized I was a fraud. I prepared for rejection, almost welcomed it as a familiar pain, but the rejection never came. Instead, they saw potential in me that I still couldn't fully see in myself. By year 5, I was running a successful company from a sleek downtown office with a view of the city skyline, but success brought its own form of loneliness. I had colleagues, employees, and business associates, but few true friends, few people who knew the real me, not just the polished professional version I presented to the world. I'd built walls to protect myself, but those same walls kept others at a distance. I was terrified of vulnerability, of letting people close enough to hurt me, of trusting that someone could see all of me and still choose to stay. The scared, invisible girl had transformed into a confident, successful woman on the outside, but inside, there were still shadows of that wounded child waiting to be found unworthy. I went back to school part-time and eventually earned my degree. I bought a beautiful apartment that felt like home, and slowly, cautiously, I began to let people in, to build friendships with people who saw me, really saw me. And through it all, there was silence from my family, a silence that spoke volumes, until one morning 6 years after I'd walked away, when my phone lit up with a name I'd never expected to see again. "Mom," the screen announced. I stared at it, heart pounding. After a moment it stopped ringing, then immediately started again. 12 missed calls over the next hour, 8 from my mother, 4 from Betty, no voicemails. Then the text started, "We need to talk. Please call us back. It's important. We're in trouble." I set my phone down on my desk, hands shaking, 6 years of silence, and now this. My chest felt tight, my throat dried. I didn't call back. Instead, I went about my day, meeting with my team, reviewing the latest updates to our platform, having lunch with a potential investor. But my mind kept circling back to those messages, to the sudden desperate need for contact after years of nothing. An hour later my phone rang again. Betty, against my better judgment, I answered. "What do you want?" I asked, skipping the pleasantries. "Alex," she said, her voice breaking, "please, we really need to talk to you about what?" A pause. "Dad's gone. He left Mom for his secretary last year. We're in a bad place. The house is being foreclosed on. Mom can't work because of her arthritis. I had to drop out of medical school. We have nowhere to go." I closed my eyes, letting the information wash over me. 6 years of silence only broken by financial desperation. "So you thought of me," I said flatly. "Your family," she said, as if that explained everything, as if those words weren't a cruel joke after everything that had happened. "Am I asked. Because for the past 6 years I haven't heard a word from any of you, not a birthday card, not a Christmas call, nothing. We were hurt," she said, her voice small. "You just left without saying goodbye." My laugh was hollow. I told Mom I was leaving. She laughed at me, said I was being dramatic. Silence on the other end. "We saw your company in the news," she finally said. "Mom recognized your picture. You've done really well for yourself." And there it was, the real reason for the sudden reconnection, not because they missed me, not because they regretted how they treated me, but because they saw that I had something they now needed. "What exactly do you want from me, Betty?" Another pause. "We need a place to stay just until we get back on our feet, and maybe a loan for a fresh start." The audacity of it stole my breath. 6 years of nothing, and now they expected me to welcome them with open arms and an open wallet. A storm of emotions swept through me. Anger at their entitlement. Vindication that after all this time they needed me more than I needed them. And beneath it all, a small, wounded part of me that still ached for their approval, for their love. That night I barely slept. I paced my apartment, arguing with myself. Yes, they had treated me terribly. Yes, they had only reached out because they wanted something from me, but they were still my family, the only one I would ever have. Maybe this was an opportunity, a chance to heal old wounds, to build the relationship I'd always wanted but never had. Perhaps their desperation would make them see me differently, value me, finally acknowledge what I had accomplished. The fantasy was seductive. I imagined them living with me, impressed by what I'd built, apologizing for the past, becoming the family I'd always wished for, the mother who would be proud of me, the sister who would be my friend. But as the night wore on, reality set in. People don't fundamentally change, not without deep, intensive work, not without genuine remorse and self-reflection. Their sudden need for me didn't erase years of emotional neglect. Their financial desperation didn't mean they suddenly saw my worth. If I helped them now, I would be setting myself up for more of the same dynamic that had nearly broken me before. I would once again become invisible except when needed. And I deserved more than that. I had worked too hard, come too far to put myself back in that position. "No," I said simply. "What? I won't be giving you a place to stay or money or anything else." "But we're family," she repeated, as if those words were a magical incantation that could erase years of neglect and pain. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "Family doesn't ignore someone for 6 years and then only reach out when they need something." "We made mistakes," she admitted, "but everyone deserves a second chance." "You had chances," I said. "Thousands of them every day for 18 years, please," she whispered. "We have nowhere else to go." The desperation in her voice tugged at something deep inside me. A part of me was still that 7-year-old girl hopping for approval, for love, for acceptance, but I wasn't that girl anymore. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said, meaning it, "but I can't help you, can't or won't." Her voice had hardened, the vulnerability replaced by a familiar accusatory tone. "Both." I said. "Goodbye, Betty." I hung up, set my phone down and walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread out before me, lights twinkling in the dusk. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, steady, whole. They showed up at my office the next day. My mother, older than I remembered, Betty, her perfect posture now slumped. Both were wearing expressions of practiced remorse that didn't quite reach their eyes. My assistant tried to turn them away, But I told her it was okay. A final conversation, closure. They sat across from me in my sleek conference room, eyes darting around, taking in the evidence of my success. The success they had never believed I could achieve. "You look well," my mother said, her voice tentative. "I am well." An uncomfortable silence fell. I didn't try to fill it, didn't offer coffee or pleasantries, just wait. "We've missed you," Betty finally said. I raised an eyebrow. "Have you?" She had the grace to look embarrassed. "We thought about reaching out many times, but you didn't. We didn't know what to say," my mother admitted. "After the way things ended." "You mean after you told me I had ruined the family? After Dad made it clear that my education, my future didn't matter?" My mother flinched. "We were under a lot of stress then. Your father, this isn't about him." I cut in. "This is about both of you. Every time you ignored me, every time you made me feel invisible, every time you chose Betty over me, not because she needed it more, but because she was the one you wanted." "That's not fair," Betty protested, "isn't it?" I looked her in the eye. "When's my birthday, Betty?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What's my birthday? When is it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, looked at my mother for help. "July," my mother said uncertainly. "July 18th. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It's April 3rd. I lived in your house for 18 years, and you don't even know when I was born." They both stared at me speechless. "I know why you're here," I continued. "Betty told me on the phone you need money, a place to stay. You need me to save you from the consequences of your choices." "We're family," my mother said, echoing Betty's words from the night before. "Family helps each other. Family loves each other." I corrected. "Family sees each other, really sees each other. You never saw me, not once." Tears welled in my mother's eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We both are. We want to make things right." For a moment I let myself imagine it, them moving in with me, starting over, building the relationship we should have had all along. But the fantasy crumbled as quickly as it formed. I thought about all the nights I'd cried alone, wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't lovable. I thought about the times I'd stood outside Betty's door, listening to my parents laugh with her, wishing I could join but knowing I wasn't welcome. I thought about how they'd never bothered to find out who I really was, what I cared about, what made me happy or sad or scared. And I thought about all the obstacles I'd overcome without them. The website crashes, the funding rejections, the nights I couldn't afford dinner, the panic attacks before important presentations, the loneliness of success with no one to share it with. I had faced all of that alone, and I had survived. More than survived, I had thrived. Helping them now wouldn't erase those years of struggle. It wouldn't heal the wounds they'd inflicted. It would only allow them to continue seeing me as a resource rather than a person, a means to an end, not an end in myself. "I believe that you're sorry," I said carefully, "but I don't believe you're sorry for the right reasons. You're sorry that you need me now. You're sorry that the golden child future you planned for Betty didn't work out. You're sorry that Dad left and the money is gone, but you're not sorry for how you treated me." "That's not true," Betty protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "I really am sorry that you're struggling," I said, "but I can't help you, not in the way you want." "So you're just going to turn your back on us?" my mother asked, a familiar note of accusation creeping into her voice. "After everything we did for you?" And there it was, the mask of remorse slipping to reveal the entitlement beneath. My mother couldn't even maintain the pretense of regret through a 20-minute conversation. "What exactly did you do for me?" I asked, echoing the question I'd asked 6 years earlier. This time, instead of silence, my mother's face hardened. "We put a roof over your head, fed you, clothed you. The basic obligations of parenthood don't count for nothing." "You're right," I agreed. "They don't count for nothing, but they also don't entitle you to anything from me now. I've built this life for myself without any help from you. I don't owe you a share of it." "You always were selfish," Betty said, her voice cold, "always thinking about yourself." I almost laughed at the irony of it. "Goodbye," I said simply. "I wish you both well, but this is the last time we'll speak." I watched them leave, my mother's shoulders hunched, Betty's steps quick with anger. I waited for the guilt to come, the doubt, the second-guessing. It never did. Instead, I felt a profound sense of peace, of completion, the final chapter of an old story closing to make room for the rest of my life. Some might call my decision harsh, unforgiving, but there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I had forgiven them long ago for my own sake, but forgiveness doesn't mean allowing toxic people back into your life. It doesn't mean subjecting yourself to more of the same treatment that hurt you in the first place. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to close a door, to recognize that some relationships can't be salvaged, that some people will never see you no matter how desperately you want them to. Story 4. My wife said, "I'm pregnant by your brother, deal with it." I said, "Congratulations." Then I revealed the vasectomy he had 5 years ago. When the real father turned out to be her sister's husband, the entire family imploded at Thanksgiving. I, 32 male, was sitting in our living room when Rochelle, 30, my wife of 6 years, walked in with this smug look on her face. We've been having problems for months, dead bedroom, constant fighting about money, her spending every weekend at her sister's place. I was actually planning to suggest counseling. "We need to talk," she said, sitting across from me instead of next to me. Red flag, I'm pregnant. My first thought was confusion because we hadn't been intimate in 3 months. Before I could respond, she continued, "It's Damon's." Damon, my younger brother, 29 years old, successful contractor, recently bought a house. The brother who'd been my best man at our wedding. She sat there with her arms crossed, actually looking proud of herself. "I know this is hard for you to hear, but Damon and I are in love, have been for months. You're just gonna have to deal with it." I stared at her for maybe 10 seconds. Then I said, "Congratulations." Her smug expression faltered. "That's it, congratulations. What else should I say? You're having a baby, that's wonderful news, you're not angry." "Oh, I'm something, but mostly I'm confused about the logistics." "What logistics?" "Well, Damon had a vasectomy 5 years ago. The color drained from her face." "What? No, he didn't." "Yeah, he did. Remember when he dated Cassandra, the one with 3 kids who wanted more? He got snipped because he never wanted children. I drove him to and from the procedure." "You're lying." I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old photos, found the one of Damon holding a bag of frozen peas against his crotch, giving a thumbs up. May 2019. He sent this to our group chat, made jokes about being shooting blanks for weeks. Rochelle snatched my phone, stared at the photo. Her hands were shaking. He never said, probably because you never actually slept with him." Update 1. So after dropping that bomb, Rochelle went ballistic, screaming about how I was trying to gaslight her, that Damon must have had it reversed, that I was making things up to hurt her. I texted Damon. "Rochelle says she's pregnant with your baby. Congrats." He called immediately. "What, bro? What the hell? I haven't even seen Rochelle since your birthday party in June." Put him on speaker. Rochelle tried to grab my phone, but I held it away. Damon continued. "Is this why she kept deeming me weird stuff? I blocked her on Instagram last month because she was sending thirst traps." "You blocked me?" Rochelle screeched. "Rochelle, what is wrong with you? You're married to my brother." She hung up on him. The next morning she tried a different approach, made me breakfast. First time in a year wearing lingerie at 7 a.m. Baby, I was confused. "The pregnancy hormones are making me crazy." "It's your baby." I just panicked. "We haven't had sex since August." "That's not true. Remember that night after Zoe's wedding?" "Zoe's wedding was in July, it's November." She did the math in her head. "I meant September. Labor Day weekend. I was at a work conference in Labor Day. You went to your sister Gwen's beach house, remember?" Another face color change. "Gotcha. How far along are you exactly?" 8 weeks. So conceived in early September when you were at the beach house with Gwen and her husband Terrell. She stood up so fast the plate flipped. Eggs everywhere. "I'm going to Gwen's." "Cool, pack everything while you're at it." Update 2, y'all. The drama escalated quick. First, Rochelle's mom Desiree called me crying. "How could you throw out a pregnant woman?" She told me it wasn't mine. Actually said it was Damon's. She's confused. Pregnancy brain. "Desiree, she's been cheating. We both know it. You don't know that." "Actually, I do. I hired a pie last month when she started acting weird. Have photos of her meeting someone at hotels, multiple times." Silence. "Then you spied on her." I suspected she was cheating. I was right. She hung up. Then came the family group chat explosion. Rochelle added everyone. My parents, her parents, siblings, even cousins. Posted a long message about how I was abandoning her in her time of need and refusing to accept my own child. My mom responded first, "Didn't you just tell him it was Damon's baby?" "Rochelle, I was confused." Damon chimed in. "I'm sending everyone my vasectomy paperwork right now. I'm sterile. Have been for 5 years. He actually did it. posted the whole medical record. Rochelle's sister Gwen. This is a private matter. Stop airing family business. Interesting reaction from someone who wasn't directly involved, right? That's when Rochelle's other sister, Imani, dropped a bomb. Gwen, didn't Rochelle stay with you guys for like 3 weeks in September? Gwen left the chat. Terrell, Gwen's husband, left the chat. Rochelle left the chat. My dad. Thanksgiving is gonna be awkward. Update 3. Got a call from Terrell. First time he'd ever called me directly. We need to talk, man to man. Met him at a sports bar. Dude looked rough. Bags under his eyes, hadn't shaved. Wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in on his Instagram story 3 days ago. Did you know? I asked. Not until the group chat, but things make sense now. Gwen's been acting weird, super protective of her phone, started accusing me of cheating out of nowhere. You think Rochelle and Gwen? No man. He took a long drink. I think Rochelle and I. What? Labor Day weekend, beach house. I got blackout drunk, woke up on the couch with my shirt inside out. Rochelle was acting weird the next morning. Gwen said I passed out early and put me to bed, but you think Rochelle? I don't think anymore, I know. Found a video on our cloud storage from our bedroom security cam. My stomach dropped. At the beach house? Yeah. We installed it because of break-ins in the area. It backs up automatically. He showed me his phone. I can't show you the whole thing, but look at the timestamp. September 2nd, 3:27 am. There was Rochelle sneaking out of their bedroom, hair messed up, carrying her shoes. Gwen was passed out on Xanax and wine. She takes anxiety meds, heavy sleeper when she mixes them. So Rochelle waited until we were both out and he couldn't finish. That's assault, man, if you were that drunk. Try explaining that to anyone. Guy claiming a woman assaulted him. While his wife was in the same bed, we sat in silence. The baby's probably mine, he finally said. Timeline matches. What are you gonna do? Hell if I know, but Thanksgiving dinner is tomorrow at Gwen's mom's house. Everyone will be there. You still going? Oh, I'm going and I'm bringing receipts. Update 4. I wasn't planning to go to Thanksgiving. It's hosted by Rochelle's family every year and given everything, seemed best to skip it. But then Damon texted our group chat. Bro, you have to come. Terrell just told me something, trust me. Then my mom called. Desiree specifically requested you come, says Rochelle has something important to tell everyone. Against my better judgment, I went. Walked in to find the most tense room I've ever experienced. Rochelle sitting next to Gwen, whispering furiously. Terrell at the opposite end of the table drinking straight bourbon, Damon next to my parents. Various aunts, uncles, cousins all sensing drama but not knowing what. Desiree clinked her glass. Before we eat, Rochelle has an announcement. Rochelle stood up, actually glowing with confidence. I wanted everyone to know that despite the challenges in my marriage, I'm blessed to announce I'm pregnant. Scattered congratulations. Some confused looks given the challenge's comment. And she continued, looking directly at me. I've decided to raise this baby with someone who actually loves me. Someone who's been there for me through everything. She grabbed Gwen's hand. My sister and I are moving in together. We're going to raise this baby as a family with or without the deadbeat dad. Wait, what was she implying? Gwen looked confused but smiled. Yes, I'll always support my sister. Terrell stood up. Actually, I have something to share too. The room went quiet. Since we're talking about the baby, we should probably discuss how it was conceived. Rochelle's face went white. Terrell, don't. No, I think everyone should know. He pulled out his phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker they use for music. This is from September 2nd, 3:47 a.m. Audio started playing. Rochelle's voice slurred. He won't remember anything. Gwen's passed out. Stop being such a baby about it. Terrell's voice barely conscious. What are you doing? Stop, shut up. You've been flirting with me all weekend. No, get off, Gwen, Rochelle laughing. She's unconscious. I put extra Xanax in her wine, just lay back. Desiree gasped, turn it off. There's more, Terrell said. Security footage of her leaving our bedroom. Photos from the pie showing her buying Plan B the next day. But I guess that didn't work. Gwen stood up slowly, staring at Rochelle. You drugged me? You slept with my husband. It wasn't like that, Rochelle pleaded. He came on to me. We just heard audio of you saying you drugged me. That's taken out of context. What context makes that better? Gwen screamed. Yes, the same line from the divorce court story, but it really applies here. Rochelle turned to me. This is your fault if you'd been a better husband. You drugged your sister and assaulted her husband because I was a bad husband. The room exploded. Desiree was crying. Gwen lunged at Rochelle but got held back by cousins. Terrell threw his wedding ring at Gwen's feet and walked out. My mom was praying out loud. Damon was recording everything, of course. Rochelle tried one more manipulation. "I'm pregnant. You can't do this to a pregnant woman." Imani laughed bitterly. "Girl, you just admitted to sexual assault on tape that everyone just heard. It wasn't assault, he wanted it. We literally just heard him saying no while drunk." Rochelle grabbed her purse and ran out. Gwen collapsed sobbing. Thanksgiving was officially canceled. The fallout has been insane. First, the legal stuff. Terrell filed a police report. The audio, video, and Plan B receipt are evidence. Rochelle's been calling everyone begging them to convince him to drop it. She showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. pounding on the door. "Please, you have to help me. They're saying I could go to jail." "You drugged and assaulted someone. It wasn't assault. We were both drunk. You literally admitted to drugging Gwen. And Terrell was unconscious. He got hard. That means he wanted it. That's not how it works. And you know it. If I go to jail, what happens to the baby? That's not my problem. You're supposed to be my husband. Actually, the divorce papers you'll be served tomorrow say otherwise." She tried to push past me into the apartment. I blocked her. "Rochelle, leave or I'm calling the cops." "You wouldn't dare." I started dialing. She ran. Then came the family division. Team Rochelle, somehow she has won. Her mom, Desiree. She made a mistake, but family sticks together. Her aunt, Keisha. Terrell probably led her on. Two cousins who think men can't be assaulted. Team everyone else. Literally everyone else. Gwen filed for divorce and a restraining order against Rochelle. Posted on Facebook, "Finding out your sister drugged you to sleep with your husband is not how I plan to end 2024. The comments were brutal but deserved. Update 6. Rochelle's entitlement reached new heights. She actually tried to sue Terrell for child support. Her lawyer dropped her after hearing the recording. She represented herself in family court, arguing that, regardless of circumstances, he's the biological father and needs to provide for his child. The judge looked at her like she had 3 heads. "Ma'am, you're currently under investigation for sexual assault against the person you're trying to get support from, but the baby needs. Ma'am, I strongly suggest you focus on your criminal case." She then pivoted to trying to get me to pay support, claiming we were still married when conception occurred, so I'm the presumptive father. My lawyer shut that down quick. "My client has texts where you explicitly stated it wasn't his child. Also, the timeline proves he was in another city during conception." But the peak entitlement. She started a pregnancy blog called Thriving After Betrayal, where she painted herself as a victim of everyone abandoning her in her time of need. She actually wrote, "Society has failed pregnant women who make difficult choices in pursuit of love." Someone found it and posted screenshots to Twitter. The ratio was beautiful. Someone commented, "Difficult choices equals drugging your sister and assaulting her husband. Girl, seek help." The blog lasted 72 hours before getting taken down for violating community guidelines. Update 7. Christmas was approaching and Rochelle went full nuclear. She created fake texts between me and her, making it look like I was threatening her. Posted them on Instagram with a long caption about escaping domestic violence. Problem: she's an idiot with technology. The timestamps were from times I was provably at work, presenting to 50 people. Also, she used the wrong phone number format. My area code was wrong. I didn't even have to defend myself. Internet detectives tore it apart in minutes. Someone found the app she used to create fake texts and posted a tutorial showing how she did it. Her account got banned for spreading false information. Then she tried to break into Gwen's house to get her things. She never lived there. Gwen's Ring camera caught her trying to jimmy the window at 3 a.m. She was wearing a baby-on-board shirt, as if being pregnant gave her breaking and entering privileges. Cops arrested her. She told them she was retrieving her property and that Gwen stole her baby's father. The officer, according to the report, "Ma'am, you can't break into someone's house regardless of your relationship drama." She got released on bail. Desiree paid it but now has charges for attempted burglary, violation of restraining order, plus the pending sexual assault investigation. Her response: posted on her mom's Facebook that the system is rigged against pregnant women. Update 8. Here's where everyone stands now. Rochelle, currently living with her mom, who's the only person still defending her, facing multiple criminal charges, still pregnant, still delusional, tried to start a pregnancy support fund that raised $73, all from her mom's church friends who don't know the full story. When someone posted the recording in the comments, donations stopped. She's been banned from all family events. Imani told me she tried to crash their cousin's birthday party and got physically removed by security. The cousin hired security specifically because of her. Gwen, in therapy, staying with Imani. Divorce proceedings moving fast since Terrell isn't contesting anything. She posted one public statement. I lost a husband and a sister in the same moment. The betrayal from both is unbearable, but at least Terrell was unconscious. Rochelle was stone cold sober when she decided to destroy me, living with his brother, also in therapy. The DNA test confirmed he's the father. He's already stated he wants no custody and will sign away rights. His lawyer is pushing for prosecution on the assault charges. He told me, I can't even look at anything from that weekend without feeling sick. Divorce finalized in record time thanks to her admission of infidelity and the criminal charges. She got nothing except her personal belongings and her car, which got repossessed last week because she hasn't made payments in 3 months. Started dating Quinn, a teacher from my gym who thinks the whole story is insane. She jokes that she's glad she's an only child so there's no sister to worry about. Damon, still traumatized that Rochelle tried to baby trap him when he's literally sterile, has provided his medical records to 3 different lawyers as evidence. Started a Reddit thread called, My Sial tried to claim I got her pregnant even though I had a vasectomy. That went viral. The baby, this is the saddest part, due in May, will likely be born while Rochelle is either on trial or in jail. Terrell wants nothing to do with it, understandably. Rochelle's mom says she'll raise it, but she's 67 with health issues. The family is completely fractured. There won't be any more joint Thanksgivings. Christmas is canceled. Rochelle's actions destroyed multiple relationships in one selfish moment. Final update: the trial was last week. Didn't go well for Rochelle. She showed up to court 6 months pregnant, wearing a maternity dress that said blessed across the belly. Her lawyer, public defender because no one else would take her case, looked defeated before it even started. The prosecution played the audio. The security footage showed the receipts for Plan B, had testimony from the pharmacy clerk who remembered her because she was laughing about needing it because she did something stupid while drunk. Rochelle took the stand against her lawyer's advice, claimed it was consensual and that the audio was roleplay. When asked why Gwen was unconscious, she actually said, she always takes too much Xanax, that's not my fault. The prosecutor, but you admitted on audio to putting extra in her wine. That was a joke. Do you often joke about drugging people? I didn't drug Terrell, no, just your sister, so you could assault her husband. It wasn't assault, he climaxed. The judge had to call a recess because several jury members looked physically ill. Verdict: guilty of sexual assault in the 3rd degree and administering a drug to facilitate a crime. Sentencing is next month, but her lawyer says she's looking at 2 to 4 years. With the baby due in May, she'll likely give birth in custody. Desiree had a complete breakdown in court, screaming that the system is destroying a mother. Security had to remove her. She's still posting on Facebook about injustice and asking for prayers for her persecuted daughter. Gwen's victim impact statement was heartbreaking. She was my sister. I trusted her more than anyone. She drugged me and violated my husband in my own bed, then tried to play victim when exposed. The betrayal is indescribable. I can't sleep. I can't trust anyone. She destroyed my life for a drunk hookup. Terrell's statement: I've been in therapy twice a week since November. I can't be intimate with anyone. I have nightmares. The fact that there's going to be a child from this assault makes it worse. I'm signing away my rights because I can't look at a baby and be reminded of the worst night of my life. Rochelle interrupted, You're abandoning your child. Ma'am, you're only making this worse for yourself. After the verdict, Rochelle's last Facebook post before going to holding, wrongfully convicted for being in love. This isn't over. Actually, Rochelle, it is. As for me, the divorce is final. I'm in therapy to process the betrayal. Quinn and I are taking things slow but steady. She came to court with me for support and held my hand through the whole thing. The house sold. I moved to a new apartment closer to work, started fresh, blocked everyone from Rochelle's family except Imani and Gwen, who have been supportive throughout this nightmare. Damon and I are closer than ever. He jokes that at least his vasectomy saved him from being baby-trapped, but I know he's messed up about it too. We go to the same therapist now, different sessions, but same practice. To everyone asking if I feel bad about the baby, yeah, I do. That child did nothing wrong but will be born into an absolute disaster. Desiree says she'll raise it, but she's already showing signs of dementia. The state might end up taking custody. It's tragic, but that's not on me. That's on Rochelle, who decided to drug her sister, assault her brother-in-law, try to baby-trap my brother, lie about everything, double down when caught, destroy every relationship she had, all because she wanted attention and drama, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. In this case, the prize is a prison sentence and a baby she won't raise. I'm done with this chapter. Moving forward, living my life. And to anyone reading this, if your partner suddenly claims they're pregnant with your sibling's baby, run, but maybe check if your sibling has had a vasectomy first. Might save you some drama. Edit. Since people keep asking, yes, this is real. No, I won't share court documents or real names. Yes, Terrell is getting therapy specifically for male assault victims. The therapist specializes in it. Men can be victims too. Edit 2. Stop trying to find Rochelle's social media. She's in jail anyway. Let it go. Edit 3. For those asking about Thanksgiving recipes, since ours was ruined, my mom makes amazing mac and cheese, but says the secret ingredient is not having family drama. So maybe work on that first. Story 5. My girlfriend said, I'm going through so much right now, I need you to be understanding and supportive. I said I'm here for you, whatever you need. When I documented her mental health crises and discovered they perfectly coincided with bill due dates and chore schedules, I told her, I absolutely understand what you're going through, while forwarding the evidence to her therapist. She begged me not to question her struggles, but I'd already learned from professionals that she'd been faking therapy sessions for 6 months. Here's how I realized she was weaponizing mental health to avoid adulting. So I'm Jake, 30, work as a software developer. Been with Chloe for about 9 months. She's 27, works part-time at a boutique when she's mentally able to, which seems to be getting less frequent. Chloe was always open about her anxiety and depression from day one. I respected that mental health is serious, and I wanted to be a supportive partner. I've been in therapy for years, she'd tell me. Some days are just harder than others. I need someone who understands that healing isn't linear. Made perfect sense. I've dealt with anxiety myself, so I knew how real and debilitating it can be. But looking back, her mental health crises had incredibly convenient timing. Every crisis seemed to happen right before she had to handle adult responsibilities. Babe, I'm so sorry, but I literally cannot handle this right now, she'd sob. My mental health has to come first. And how could I argue with that? Mental health does come first. I'd end up paying her bills, doing her chores, making her excuses to employers. Red flag that I totally missed at the time. Wednesday, I paid the full month's rent while Chloe stayed in bed claiming the stress had triggered a dissociative episode. Thursday, she felt well enough to go shopping with friends and post Instagram stories at brunch. Friday, I suggested maybe we could meal prep together to save money, and suddenly she was having intrusive thoughts and couldn't handle being in the kitchen. Saturday, she was fine enough to go to a concert that had been planned for weeks. The pattern was starting to bug me, but I felt guilty for even noticing it. You're not supposed to question someone's mental health struggles, right? Sunday evening, I mentioned that the apartment was getting messy and maybe we could tackle it together over the weekend. Jake, I can't believe you're adding pressure when you know I'm struggling, she said, tearing up immediately. Cleaning feels impossible when I'm in this headspace. I'm not trying to pressure you, I just thought we could do it together. That makes it worse. Now I feel guilty for not being able to function like a normal person. Monday, I spent 3 hours cleaning the entire apartment while she took a mental health day in bed watching Netflix. Tuesday, she felt great and invited friends over to our now clean apartment. That's when I started keeping a log. Not to be manipulative or prove anything, I genuinely thought tracking her patterns might help us figure out triggers so I could be more supportive. Week 1. Panic attack Monday, rent due. Fine by Wednesday, friend's birthday party. Week 2. Depression Tuesday, job interview scheduled. Energetic Thursday, concert week 3. Anxiety Sunday, family dinner with my parents. Upbeat Tuesday, girls trip planning. Week 4, breakdown Friday, performance review at work. Happy Saturday, shopping day. After a month of tracking, the pattern was undeniable. Chloe's mental health crises had 100% correlation with responsibilities and 0% correlation with actual stressful events. But I still gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just triggered by responsibilities because of past trauma. Month 2 of documentation made things clearer. I'm having such bad intrusive thoughts about work, she'd say Sunday night. I don't think I can go in tomorrow. Monday she'd call in sick with anxiety. Tuesday she'd be perfectly fine and suggest we go to that new restaurant that costs $60 per person. Spending time together helps my mental health, she'd explain when I hesitated about the cost. Month 3, I decided to test something. Hey, my parents are coming to visit next weekend. Think we could tidy up the place Thursday, Wednesday night, full anxiety attack about feeling overwhelmed. Thursday, I told her I'd talk to my parents and they were coming Sunday instead of Saturday. Suddenly, Sunday was too overwhelming and Thursday felt manageable again. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. Friday, I called my own therapist doctor, Martinez, who I'd seen on and off for actual anxiety issues. I need advice about supporting someone with mental health issues, I told him. Explained the patterns I'd noticed without naming Chloe specifically. Jake, what you're describing sounds like emotional manipulation using mental health as a shield, he said carefully. But you can't fake anxiety and depression, right? You can't fake the conditions themselves, but you can definitely weaponize mental health language to avoid consequences. It's actually quite common. How can you tell the difference? Real mental health struggles don't conveniently align with avoiding responsibilities, and someone genuinely working on their mental health doesn't use it to manipulate others into enabling behaviors. He gave me resources about emotional manipulation tactics and suggested I pay attention to whether her episodes ever inconvenienced her or only benefited her. Saturday, I decided to investigate her therapy claims. How's therapy going? I asked casually. Really good. Dr. Reynolds is helping me work through childhood trauma that's causing my anxiety. That's great. What kind of techniques is she teaching you? Chloe got vague immediately. Oh, breathing exercises and stuff. Like CBT, DBT, what's her approach? I don't really like talking about therapy details, it's private. Monday I did something I'm not proud of but felt necessary. Checked our shared calendar where Chloe had marked her therapy appointments. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m. for 6 months. Tuesday I took a long lunch and drove by Dr. Reynolds' office at 2 p.m. Chloe's car wasn't there. Waited until 3 p.m., no sign of her. Wednesday I checked the previous Tuesday. Same thing, no car, no Chloe. Thursday I confronted her gently. How was therapy yesterday? Good, we talked about my abandonment issues. What time was your appointment again? 2 o'clock like always. And you were there the full hour, she got defensive immediately. Why are you questioning me? This feels like you don't trust me. I'm just trying to understand your schedule better. My therapy is private, I shouldn't have to prove anything to you. Friday, I called Dr. Reynolds' office directly. Hi, I'm trying to coordinate couples therapy with my girlfriend Chloe's existing treatment. Can you tell me when her next appointment is? I'm sorry, but we don't have any patient by that name. Chloe Morrison, she's been seeing Dr. Reynolds for 6 months. Sir, doctor. Reynolds hasn't taken new patients in over a year, and we don't have anyone named Chloe in our system. I realized Chloe had been lying about therapy for our entire relationship. Every Tuesday she'd leave for therapy and go somewhere else for an hour, then come home and use her session to justify her behavior. Sunday, I started investigating her medication claims. Chloe always talked about her antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. Used them to explain mood swings and energy levels. I looked through our bathroom medicine cabinet while she was out. No prescription bottles for Chloe, only my vitamins and some over-the-counter stuff. Tuesday, I checked her purse while she was showering. No pill bottles. Wednesday, I asked directly, are you supposed to take your medication with food? I noticed you skip breakfast sometimes. Oh, I keep my meds in my car so I don't forget them. Thursday, I checked her car. No medications anywhere. Friday, I called her pharmacy to check if prescriptions were ready for pickup. We don't have any prescriptions on file for Chloe Morrison. I had enough evidence to know the entire mental health narrative was fabricated. But instead of confronting her alone, I decided to involve people who actually cared about her well-being. Monday, I arranged a group meeting under the pretense of planning an intervention to help Chloe. I'm worried about her mental health crises and want to make sure we're all supporting her properly, I told them. Wednesday evening, we all met at her Sarah's, Chloe's best friend, house. Chloe's parents, her sister, her best friend. I presented my documentation, the crisis timing patterns, the fake therapy appointments, the non-existent medications. Chloe's been telling me she's in treatment for severe anxiety and depression, I explained, but she's been lying about therapy for 6 months. Her mother was shocked. Anxiety and depression? Jake, Chloe's never had mental health issues. She's always been dramatic but not clinically depressed. What do you mean dramatic? I asked. Her sister Amy spoke up. Chloe's been pulling this same stuff since high school. Whenever she didn't want to do something, suddenly she'd be too stressed or too overwhelmed. She failed her senior year because she claimed test anxiety, her dad added, but she never had anxiety during parties or fun activities. Sarah nodded. In college, she'd have panic attacks every time we had group projects, but she was fine for spring break trips. I realized Chloe had been using fake mental health crises to manipulate people for over a decade. Her family had enabled it by making excuses and accommodating her struggles. Her friends had started distancing themselves because they got tired of the constant drama. I was just the latest person to fall for her act. Friday, we planned a real intervention for Sunday. Chloe needs to choose between getting actual professional help or losing her support network, her mother said firmly. We can't keep enabling her to use mental health as manipulation, Amy agreed. It's harmful to people with real mental health issues, Sarah added. Saturday, I felt nervous about confronting her, but knew it was necessary. Using mental health as manipulation hurts people who actually struggle with these conditions. Sunday afternoon intervention at her parents' house. Chloe walked in expecting family dinner and found everyone she'd manipulated sitting in a circle. "What's this about?" she asked, immediately suspicious. "We need to talk about your mental health claims," her mother started. "Jake's been documenting your anxiety patterns," Amy continued. "They perfectly match avoiding responsibilities. You've been lying about therapy for 6 months," I added, "and faking prescription medications," her dad said. Chloe immediately went into crisis mode. "I can't believe you're attacking me when I'm already struggling. This is going to trigger a panic attack." "Cut the act, Chloe," her mother said firmly. "We know you're not in therapy. We know you don't have medications. We know the timing of your episodes. You don't understand mental health," Chloe protested, starting to cry. "We understand manipulation," Sarah replied, "and we're done enabling it," her coworker spoke up. "You've called in sick with anxiety 12 times this quarter but never missed a single day for fun activities. Your depression only happens when bills are due," I added. "This is emotional abuse," Chloe sobbed. "You're gaslighting me about my mental health." Her father had enough. "Chloe, either you get real professional help for whatever's actually going on or you lose our support entirely." "Real therapy," her mother clarified. "Real appointments that we verify, real medication if needed, real accountability." "You have 2 choices," Amy said. "Honest treatment or no more enabling from any of us." Update 1. Chloe chose manipulation over accountability. Instead of agreeing to real treatment, she doubled down on her victim narrative. "My entire family has turned against me during my darkest hour," she posted on social media. "Mental health stigma is real." The post backfired. Several of her friends who'd been manipulated commented with their own experiences. "Girl, you borrowed $300 from me for therapy copies and spent it on clothes," one wrote. "You've been faking mental health issues since freshman year," another added. Within 24 hours, her social media manipulation attempt exposed her to even more people. Monday, her parents cut off financial support. "No more car insurance, phone bill, or emergency money until you're in verified treatment." Tuesday, her sister blocked her on all platforms. "I'm done being manipulated." Wednesday, Sarah and her friend group dropped her entirely. "We can't trust anything she says anymore." Thursday, I officially ended our relationship and asked her to move out. "You're abandoning me when I need support most," she cried. "I'm ending a relationship built on lies and manipulation. I'll prove to you that my mental health issues are real. By going to actual therapy and getting honest treatment, which you've refused to do." Friday, she moved back in with her parents, who immediately implemented strict rules. No more crisis episodes without professional verification. No more avoiding responsibilities. No more using mental health language to manipulate situations. "We should have done this years ago," her mother told me. "We enabled her manipulation by always making excuses." Update 2. 3 weeks later, Chloe tried to resume her manipulation tactics with new people. She joined online mental health support groups and started dating someone who didn't know her history, but her reputation in our social circle was destroyed. Word spread quickly about her fake therapy and convenient crisis timing. "Everyone knows now," Sarah told me. "She can't run the same scam on our friends anymore." Her new boyfriend lasted 2 weeks before her manipulation patterns became obvious. "She had a panic attack when I asked her to split dinner costs," he told me when we crossed paths. "But she was fine when I offered to pay for her drinks." Chloe tried reconnecting with old friends from college, but her sister Amy had already warned them. "We love you, but you need professional help," they told her. "We can't maintain friendships built on manipulation." Month 2 without enablers, Chloe hit rock bottom. No one to pay her bills, no one to make excuses for her, no one to accommodate her fake crises. Her parents gave her an ultimatum: real therapy or homelessness. "We've made appointments with 3 different therapists," her mother said. "Choose one or find somewhere else to live." Finally faced with actual consequences, Chloe agreed to legitimate treatment. But real therapy meant real accountability. "Your patterns suggest you're using mental health language to avoid responsibilities," her actual therapist told her. "That's not the same as having clinical anxiety or depression. So I don't have mental health issues. You have behavioral patterns that need addressing." But weaponizing mental health terminology is harmful to yourself and others. Final update. 6 months later, Chloe completed a program specifically for people who misuse mental health claims. "I learned that I was terrified of failure and adult responsibilities," she explained during a family therapy session I attended. "Faking crises seemed easier than risking disappointment." "Why mental health specifically?" her therapist asked. "Because people can't argue with it. If I said I was tired or busy, people would push back. But if I said I was having anxiety, they'd feel guilty for questioning me." The treatment process was difficult for everyone. Her family had to learn to distinguish between supporting mental health and enabling manipulation. "I learned that real mental health advocacy means not accepting fake claims that stigmatize genuine conditions." Chloe had to face the reality that she'd hurt people who actually struggle with anxiety and depression. "I made it harder for people with real mental health issues to be believed," she admitted. "That wasn't fair." Today, Chloe works with her therapist on developing actual coping skills for stress instead of avoidance through fake crises. She's learning to handle adult responsibilities without weaponizing mental health language. Her relationships with family are slowly healing, but trust takes time to rebuild. As for us, we're not getting back together. The manipulation damaged our relationship beyond repair. But I'm glad she's getting real help for her actual issues instead of faking conditions she doesn't have. Mental health is serious and deserves respect. Using it as manipulation hurts everyone: the person faking, their loved ones, and people with genuine mental health conditions. Real support means encouraging actual treatment, not enabling avoidance behaviors. Sometimes the most supportive thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone's manipulation, even when they claim it's for mental health reasons. Chloe's fake crises taught me to distinguish between supporting genuine struggles and enabling harmful patterns. Real mental health recovery requires honesty, accountability, and professional help, not convenient timing and manufactured emergencies. The timing patterns don't lie, and neither should claims about mental health. Story 6. I walked in early from work and found her on FaceTime with her affair partner, wearing the necklace I bought her. She just smirked and said, "Relax, he notices it more than you ever did." I didn't argue, but weeks later she learned who the necklace really belonged to. She was wearing the necklace, my great-grandmother's necklace, the one that had been passed down through 3 generations of women in my family, waiting for the one I would marry. And she was showing it off to another man on a video call. I had just walked in the door 2 hours early from a business trip and found her laughing, tilting her head so the diamond caught the light. When she saw me, she didn't panic. She didn't even end the call. She just smirked a cruel, confident little smile and said the words that ended our life together. "Relax, he notices it more than you ever did." I didn't say a word, I just smiled back. She thought the necklace was her prize, a symbol of the life she was stealing from me. She had no idea that the necklace itself was the trap, and in a few short weeks when she tried to sell it to fund her new life, she wasn't just going to learn who it really belonged to. She was going to learn what it costs to betray my family. The silence in my car on the drive home from the airport was the last moment of peace I would have for a long time. I'm 42, I run a private equity firm, and my life is built on precision, strategy, and understanding the true value of an asset. I thought my relationship with Catherine, my girlfriend of 3 years, was one of my most stable assets. I was wrong. Catherine is 33, a former art gallery curator who now, thanks to my financial support, runs a lifestyle consulting business, which is a fancy way of saying she tells wealthy people what to buy. She's beautiful, charming, and ambitious, qualities I thought I admired. We lived together in my penthouse apartment, a place that had been in my family for decades. The business trip was supposed to last until Friday. I wrapped it up early, a rare win, and decided to fly home on Wednesday to surprise her. I let myself into the apartment quietly, expecting to find her working in her office. Instead, I heard her voice, light and flirtatious, coming from our bedroom. I pushed the door open and the scene imprinted itself on my brain. Catherine was lounging on the bed, propped up on pillows, her laptop opened in front of her. On the screen was a man's face, someone I'd never seen before, handsome, in a generic gym and tan sort of way. They were laughing, and around her neck was the Beaumont necklace. It's not just a piece of jewelry, it's a custom-made Cartier piece from the 1920s, a cascade of diamonds and sapphires that belonged to my great-grandmother. It's the centerpiece of my family's estate jewelry managed by a private trust. It is, to put it mildly, priceless. There is a tradition in my family. The Beaumont necklace is not given, it is presented. It is loaned to the woman a Beaumont man intends to marry as a symbol of her acceptance into the family. It is returned to the trust upon divorce or death. It never, ever truly belongs to the wearer. It belongs to the family. I had presented it to Catherine 6 months ago, on the night I proposed. She had cried, said yes, and seemed to understand the gravity of what the necklace represented. Now she was using it as a prop in a flirtation with a stranger. When she saw me standing in the doorway, her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. The man on the screen, whose name I would later learn was Julian, looked confused. Catherine recovered instantly. She didn't slam the laptop shut. She didn't stammer an excuse. She held my gaze, a defiant glint in her eye, and delivered that line. "Relax, he notices it more than you ever did." The disrespect was so profound, so absolute, it was almost stunning. She wasn't just cheating, she was mocking my family's legacy to my face. The hurt was a physical blow, but my entire life has been about managing high-stakes situations without emotion. The investor in me took over, the asset was compromised, the partnership was terminated. Now it was time for liquidation. I didn't yell, I didn't argue. I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. "I see," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. "Well, don't let me interrupt." I closed the bedroom door, walked into my office, and shut the door. The first call I made was to my lawyer. The second was to Mr. Dubois, the elderly, fiercely discreet jeweler, whose family had been managing the Beaumont estate collection for a century. I explained the situation in calm, precise terms. Mr. Dubois, who had known me since I was a boy, was silent for a moment, a silence that conveyed more outrage than a scream ever could. Then he simply said, "The trap is set, Thomas. Let me know when you are ready to spring it." My plan began to form, cold and clear in my mind. Catherine's betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was a strategic miscalculation of epic proportions. She saw the necklace as a financial asset she could leverage. She had no idea it was actually her greatest liability. I spent the next hour in my office, not packing a bag but securing my life. I transferred the bulk of our liquid assets from joint accounts into a private one. I changed the passwords on our home security and all my personal accounts. I drafted an email to our building's management, informing them that Catherine would be moving out and her access rights should be revoked on a specific date. When I walked out of the office, she was waiting for me in the living room, laptop gone. She had changed into a silk robe, her arms crossed, ready for a fight. She sounded completely bored. "Are you going to throw a tantrum now?" "No," I said, walking to the bar to pour myself a whiskey. "There's nothing to argue about, you've made your position clear. So that's it, you're just going to be passive-aggressive." "I'm not being passive," I said, taking a sip. "I'm being decisive, we're done, Catherine." She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "You can't be serious, you're breaking up with me because I was talking to a friend. You were flaunting my family's legacy to your affair partner. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a declaration, and I accept." "Fine," she spat. "I was getting tired of this stuffy apartment anyway. Julian has a place in the Hamptons, I'll be out by the end of the week." She said it with such confidence, such entitlement. She truly believed she could just walk away, necklace in hand, into a better life. "Good," I said, "that aligns with my timeline." She stared at me, confused by my lack of rage, my calm acceptance. She was expecting a scene, begging drama. She wasn't getting it. The unknown was making her uneasy. She walked back to the bedroom and I heard her on the phone, her voice low and urgent, likely telling Julian the good news. Let her believe she was in control. The market always corrects, and a massive correction was coming for her. Update 1 week later. Thank you for the comments and the support. It's a strange situation and writing it out helps clarify the steps I've taken. For those of you who think this is just about a piece of jewelry, you're missing the point. It's about legacy, trust, and the consequences of profound betrayal. Catherine moved out 2 days after the confrontation. It was a cold, efficient process. She hired movers, packed her designer clothes and the art she'd picked out for the apartment and left. She took the necklace, of course. She wore it out of the building, a final act of defiance. I didn't stop her. The trap wasn't ready yet. The day she left, I had the locks changed and the apartment professionally deep cleaned. Erasing her presence felt like closing a bad trade. The financial separation was swift. My lawyer sent her lawyer a formal notice of the end of our engagement and a breakdown of our separated assets. Her lawyer's response was predictable. They argued that the Beaumont necklace was a premarital gift and therefore Catherine's personal property with an estimated value in the seven-figure range. My lawyer's response, drafted with the help of Mr. Dubois and the trust's legal team, was a masterpiece of understated power. It stated that the necklace was not a gift, but a conditional loan from the Beaumont Family Trust, and we had extensive documentation to prove it, including the original acquisition papers from Cartier. A century of insurance policies listing the trust as the sole owner and a signed document from Catherine herself, which she thought was a simple insurance appraisal form, acknowledging the terms of the loan. This was the first tremor she would have felt, the realization that the necklace wasn't a simple asset. Her lawyer, likely realizing he was out of his depth, went quiet. Now for the trap. Mr. Dubois, and I knew that Catherine's new partner, Julian, was motivated by status and money. Catherine's value to him was tied to her perceived wealth with the necklace as her crown jewel. We needed to bait them into making a move that would expose them both. Mr. Dubois, through his vast network of high-end jewelers and auction houses, began to subtly circulate a rumor. He let it be known that the legendary Beaumont earrings, the matching pair to the necklace which had been separated from the set in the 1940s, had been located. He hinted that a private, incredibly discreet sale was being arranged, and that the owner of the Beaumont necklace would have the exclusive first right of refusal. The price would be astronomical, but for a collector, uniting the set would be the coup of a lifetime. It was a complete fabrication, of course. The earrings were sitting in a vault in Geneva, owned by the same trust as the necklace. But Catherine and Julian didn't know that. As expected, the rumor reached them. I know this because Catherine's best friend, who was horrified by the cheating and has been a quiet source of information, told me that Catherine was ecstatic. She saw it as her chance to solidify her status, to become the woman who reunited the legendary Beaumont set. Julian was apparently even more excited, pushing her, telling her this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The problem, of course, was money. They didn't have the kind of cash needed for such a purchase, which meant they would need to leverage their only asset, the necklace itself. They would have to either sell it or use it as collateral for a massive loan, and that is precisely what I was waiting for. To make the bait even more enticing, Mr. Dubois arranged for a representative from the fictional seller of the earrings to contact Catherine. The representative informed her that, to verify her right of first refusal, she would need to provide a certified appraisal and proof of ownership of the necklace from a reputable firm. She took the bait. Last Thursday, she scheduled an appointment with Sotheby's for a private appraisal. My lawyer was notified immediately through a back channel. The stage was set. The players were in position. Catherine was about to walk into a room, believing she was about to secure her future. In reality, she was walking into a carefully constructed legal ambush, and the priceless necklace around her neck was about to become the millstone that would drag her down. Update 2. 2 weeks later, the events of the past week have unfolded with the beautiful, inevitable precision of a Swiss watch. The quiet support from this community continues to be a welcome anchor in this storm. Catherine arrived at Sotheby's for her appraisal appointment last Thursday. She was with Julian, both of them dressed to the nines, playing the part of the wealthy power couple. They were escorted to a private viewing room where a senior gemologist and a legal representative from Sotheby's were waiting. What Catherine didn't know was that my lawyer, Mr. Harding, and a representative from the Beaumont Family Trust were waiting in an adjacent room connected by a discreet audio link. The appraisal began as expected. The gemologist examined the necklace with reverence, confirming its authenticity and its flawless condition. He spoke of its history, its craftsmanship. Catherine and Julian were beaming, their victory almost within reach. The gemologist gave a preliminary valuation that was even higher than they had anticipated. Then came the turn. The Sotheby's legal representative cleared his throat. His tone shifted from deferential to professional. Before we can proceed with a formal certificate of appraisal, we need to address a small matter of provenance. Our records indicate this piece is the property of the Beaumont Family Trust. We just need to see the documentation of the transfer of ownership to you. Catherine, ever the performer, gave a light laugh. Oh, it was a gift from my former fiancé, Thomas Beaumont, a premarital gift. It's all very straightforward. I see, the lawyer said. The issue is the trust has a rather strict policy regarding its pieces. They are almost never gifted outright. We have a flag on this piece in our system. We are legally obligated to contact the registered owner, the trust, to confirm the transfer before we can appraise or broker it. The color began to drain from Catherine's face. Julian, who had been lounging in his chair like a king, sat up straight. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "It's her property. If you won't appraise it, we'll take it somewhere else." The Sotheby's lawyer remained calm. "You are free to do so. However, you will find that any reputable house will run into the same flag in the International Art and Jewelry Database. In fact, now that you have presented it here, we are required to file a report. Attempting to sell or secure a loan against a disputed piece of this value can have serious legal implications." The trap had sprung. She was caught. She couldn't sell the necklace. She couldn't use it as collateral. The multi-million-dollar asset she thought she possessed was, in her hands, nothing more than a beautiful, worthless rock. It was at that moment that my lawyer, Mr. Harding, chose to make his entrance. He walked into the room, calm and imposing, and handed Catherine's lawyer, who had accompanied them, a folder. "This should clarify things," Mr. Harding said. Inside the folder was a copy of the signed loan agreement for the necklace, a formal demand for its immediate return to the trust, and a notice of intent to file a civil suit for misappropriation of assets and potentially press criminal charges if it was not returned within 24 hours. The scene, as it was described to me later, was pure chaos. Julian, realizing he had attached himself to a woman who not only had no money but was now in serious legal trouble, stood up and walked out of the room without a word. He left Catherine there alone to face the consequences. Her power couple fantasy dissolved in an instant. Catherine's lawyer, after a quick panicked reading of the documents, advised her to return the necklace immediately. She had no choice. She took it off, her hands shaking, and handed it to the trust representative. The symbol of her grand betrayal was no longer hers. She left Sotheby's alone, stripped of her prize, her partner, and her dignity. The fallout has been swift. Julian has predictably vanished. He has blocked her number and disappeared from her life. He was a parasite and the host was no longer viable. Catherine's legal troubles are just beginning. The trust is suing her for damages for the security risks she exposed the necklace to and for the legal fees incurred in its recovery. Her lifestyle consulting business has collapsed as her reputation in the wealthy circles she catered to is now ruined. The story of the girl who tried to steal the Beaumont necklace is a cautionary tale being whispered at every charity gala and country club in the city. She has been bombarding me with messages, of course, emails, texts, voicemails left with my assistant. They are a pathetic mix of rage, threats, and tearful pleas for forgiveness. She blames me for everything, for humiliating her, for ruining her life. She still doesn't understand. I didn't ruin her life. I just arranged for her to face the reality she had created. Final update. 3 months later, it's been 3 months since the day at Sotheby's. The apartment is quiet. The legal battles are winding down, and my life is my own again. The Beaumont necklace is back where it belongs, resting in a climate-controlled vault, its legacy untarnished. The conclusion to Catherine's story is as predictable as it is just. Her lawsuit with the trust was settled out of court. She had no legal standing, and her lawyer knew it. She was forced to sign a humiliating public retraction and a non-disclosure agreement, and a judgment was placed against her for the legal fees, a debt that will follow her for years. Without Julian, without the necklace, and without my financial support, her world shrank with brutal speed. She couldn't afford her trendy apartment or her designer lifestyle. Her wealthy friends, who were only ever interested in her proximity to my money and status, abandoned her. The consulting business is a memory. I heard through a distant acquaintance that she had to move back to her hometown into a small apartment paid for by her parents. She's working as an administrative assistant at a real estate office. The life of glamour she thought she had secured was a mirage, and it vanished the moment she was held accountable. I received one final handwritten letter from her about a month ago. It was different from the angry, desperate emails. It was a letter of surrender. She apologized. She said she was arrogant and foolish, that she had been seduced by a lifestyle she thought she deserved, and that she had destroyed the only real and valuable thing in her life, my love and trust. She said she finally understood that the necklace was never the prize. The man who offered it to her was. I read the letter, and for the first time I felt a flicker of something other than cold anger. It wasn't forgiveness. It was closer to pity. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Our story was over. The revenge was never about humiliating her, though that was an unavoidable byproduct. It was about protecting my family's legacy and enforcing a simple, immutable law of nature. Actions have consequences. She made a calculated bet that she could betray me and walk away with the spoils. She miscalculated the value of the asset and the strength of the opponent. My life is moving forward. My business is thriving. I've spent more time with my family in the last 3 months than I had in the previous 3 years. I even had dinner with Mr. Dubois last week, and we shared a bottle of wine and a quiet toast to tradition and to lessons learned. The other night I was at a charity event, and a woman I know, the wife of a business associate, came up to me. She lowered her voice. I heard what happened with Catherine. I just want to say, good for you. Some people need to learn that you can't just take things that don't belong to you, and that's the final truth. Catherine thought she could take my family's history, my trust, my future. But those things were never hers to take. She tried to steal a legacy, and in the end, she's the one who was left with nothing. The necklace is safe, and so am I. The books are balanced. The trade is closed. Story 7. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in my home office wrapping up some work when a notification popped up on our shared tablet. It was a text message, synced from my fiancée Claire's phone. We rarely used the tablet, it mostly just sat on the charger, but for some reason I glanced at it. The message was from her mom. Her mom. Any luck getting him to talk about the loans? And then a new message from Claire, A reply that just popped up right as I was looking. Not yet, he's avoiding it. But don't worry, I'll get him to agree before the wedding. Once he pays them off, I'm gone. I just stared at it. The words didn't seem real. It was like my brain just refused to process them. I run my own architecture firm. My entire life is about details, about how things fit together. And this one sentence just took a sledgehammer to the entire structure of my life. Gone, once he pays them off. It wasn't a joke. It was a cold, simple, brutal plan. My first thought was just white-hot rage. I wanted to pick up the tablet and throw it through the wall. I wanted to walk into the living room where I could hear her laughing at some show on TV and just unleash hell. But then something else took over. A weird, icy calm. This wasn't something you scream about. Screaming is what you do when you're trying to save something. This thing was already dead. All that was left was the demolition. I took out my phone and took a picture of the tablet screen. I emailed it to myself. Then I went back to the message thread on the tablet and just kept scrolling up. She'd been careless, so sure that her quiet, predictable fiancé would never think to look. It was all there going back months. A carefully orchestrated plot masterminded by her mother to get me to pay off her $150,000 in student loan debt from her art history degree. There were texts from her mom coaching her on what to say, how to act. Don't be aggressive about it. Make it about our future. Tell him you can't feel settled until you're both debt-free as a team. Cry a little if you have to. He'll feel guilty. And Claire's replies, he's so focused on the wedding planning, it's the perfect distraction. I almost feel bad sometimes. He's a good guy. Followed by her mom's reply, don't feel bad, feel smart. This is for your future, not his. The one that really got me was about what came after, but what do I do after? It'll be obvious if I leave right away. You stay for a year, make it look good. Then you say you're unhappy, you've grown apart. By then the money is gone, the loans are paid, you walk away free and clear. It's a perfect plan, a perfect plan. For 2 years I thought we were building a life. She thought she was executing a heist. I closed the message up. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. My hand was perfectly steady as I poured a glass of water. She was still on the couch. Hey babe, she said, not looking up from the TV. You okay? You're quiet. Just thinking about a project, I said. My voice sounded normal. It was the calmest I had ever felt. She thought she was playing chess and that I didn't even know there was a board. She had no idea I had just seen the whole game, every move she was planning to make, and I was about to flip the table over. Update 1, the 2 weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. I didn't confront her, not yet. Confrontation would lead to denial, fake tears, and promises to change. It would be messy. I don't do messy. I do clean, precise, and final. Thank you for all the comments on my first post. A lot of you said to play the long game, but I couldn't. Every moment I was in the same house as her felt like a lie. My plan had to be fast and brutal. First, I documented everything, every text message. I also started looking into our finances. She lived in my house. I paid the mortgage and all the utilities. She drove a car that was in my name. I paid for her insurance, her gas, our vacations, our dinners out. Her small paycheck from the art gallery was her fund money. My income was our life money. I had been supporting a parasite and she was planning to kill the host after one last big meal. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense guy named Frank, confirmed my next steps. She has no legal claim to your house or your assets as a girlfriend. Your only vulnerability is if you voluntarily give her a large sum of money. The entire plan hinges on you agreeing to pay those loans. So, you're going to agree. That was the key. I had to let her think she was winning. I had to walk her right up to the finish line, let her taste the victory, and then pull the rug out from under her so hard she wouldn't know what hit her. So I started playing the part. A few days after I found the texts, I brought it up. We were making dinner. I sighed dramatically and said, you know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said about your loans, about us starting our life as a team. She turned to me, her eyes wide with fake hope. You have, yeah, I said, and I don't want that hanging over us. It's my wedding gift to you. I'm going to pay them off. She burst into tears. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. She threw her arms around me, sobbing about how I was the most generous, wonderful man alive. She immediately called her mom to tell her the news. I could hear her mother's triumphant squeals through the phone. The fish had taken the bait. There's just one thing I added after she hung up. I don't want to just wire the money. This is a huge moment for us. I want to do it properly. I want to have a dinner, a celebration with our parents. I'll have my bank draw up a cashier's check for the full amount, and I'll present it to you that night in front of our families, a real symbol of us starting our new life together." She was ecstatic, a public ceremony of her victory. It was more than she could have dreamed of. She thought I was being romantic. I was just setting the stage. The dinner was last night, a private room in the best restaurant in town. Claire and her parents were on one side of the table. My parents were on the other. Claire was glowing, absolutely radiant. Her mom looked like a cat that had just swallowed a canary. Her dad, a decent guy who I now realize was completely clueless, just looked happy for his daughter. We went through the motions: small talk, wine, appetizers. Claire and her mom kept exchanging little knowing smiles. My parents were talking about how excited they were for the wedding. Then, after the main course, I stood up. I had a single envelope in my hand. "As you all know," I began, "I've asked you here for a special reason. Claire and I are about to start a life together, and I wanted to begin that life on the right foot. Claire, your student loan debt has been a huge burden on you, and because I love you, I want to lift that burden. So, as my wedding gift to you, I am paying off your entire student loan debt." My parents smiled, impressed by the gesture. Claire's dad clapped me on the shoulder. Claire and her mom were practically vibrating with joy. I opened the envelope, but I didn't pull out a check. I pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a printed, blown-up screenshot of the text message she had sent me 2 weeks ago. I laid it on the center of the table for everyone to see. "Don't worry, once he pays off my student loans, I'll leave." The silence that fell over that room was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Claire's face went from radiant joy to absolute bone-white horror in a split second. Her mother looked like she had been slapped. My parents stared at the paper, then at Claire, their faces a mask of confusion and disgust. Her father read the text in the color drained from his face. He just looked at his daughter, then his wife, and the dawning realization was painful to watch. "This was never a wedding," I said, my voice cold and even. "It was a con. A very well-planned con, I'll admit. Your mother should be proud." I then pulled out a second set of papers. They were copies of the text conversations between Claire and her mom, the ones where they planned the whole scheme. I handed a set to my parents and a set to her father. "I believe these will answer any questions you might have," I said. Claire started sobbing, a pathetic gasping sound. "Mark, no, it's not what it looks like. I can explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said, cutting her off. "You explained it all perfectly in your texts. The wedding is off. We are over." I looked at her dad. "I'm sorry you had to find out like this. You raised a daughter, but your wife raised a con artist." Then I stood up. "Mom, Dad, let's go." We walked out of that restaurant, leaving them to sit in the wreckage. The fallout began before I even got to my car. A hysterical voicemail from Claire, screaming and crying, then a text. "You have ruined my life." My reply was simple. "No, I just stopped paying for it." I got home and all her stuff was already gone. I'd had movers pack it up and deliver it to her parents' house while we were at dinner. The locks were changed. The digital key code was erased. For the past 24 hours, my phone has been a war zone. I finally just blocked her number and her mom's, but I got one last desperate voicemail from a blocked number this morning. It was her. "Mark, please," she sobbed. "You can't do this. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. My mom, she pushed me. Please, I'm going to go to your parents' house. I'm going to talk to them. They love me. They'll make you listen." She thinks this is a negotiation. She thinks she can deploy her fake tears and manipulate my parents. She has no idea who my father is. She has no idea what happens when you try to con a family of architects. She's about to try and reason with the man who taught me how to spot a fatal flaw from a mile away. "Hey, everyone. It's Mark, the op from the story about the student loan scheme." First of all, the response to my first post was insane. I read hundreds of your comments, and it felt good knowing I wasn't crazy for how I handled things. A lot of you were asking for an update, especially about what would happen when my ex-fiancée Claire tried to confront my parents. Well, she did it, and the result was more spectacular than I could have ever planned. So here's the final chapter. After the dinner where I exposed everything, I went completely dark. I blocked Claire and her mom on everything. The silence was incredible. My parents, on the other hand, were getting the full court press. My mom told me Claire had left her a dozen tearful, rambling voicemails, spinning a tale about how it was all a huge misunderstanding, and how her mother had pressured her into a stupid joke. My mom wasn't buying a word of it. I had already warned them about Claire's final, desperate threat from her last voicemail that she was going to show up at their house. My dad's only response was a calm, "Let her come." It happened on Saturday. I was at my own place trying to enjoy a quiet weekend when my dad called me. His voice was calm, but I could hear a steel edge to it that I knew well. "Mark," he said, "the demolition crew has arrived." He put the phone on speaker and set it down on the table in his study right next to the front door. I was about to have a front row seat. I heard the doorbell ring. I heard my mom open the door. Her voice was polite but frosty. "Claire, we weren't expecting you." Then I heard Claire, her voice thick with fake tears. "I am so sorry to bother you. I had to talk to you. I had to explain. Mark won't speak to me and he's not thinking clearly. He's throwing everything away over a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding when it's written in black and white, Claire," a deep voice cut in. That was my dad. He had stepped into the entryway. "My son showed us your texts, all of them." Claire started sobbing harder, but that wasn't me. That was my mother. She's the one who is obsessed with my loans. She put all those ideas in my head. "I love Mark. I would never hurt him. You know me. You know I love him." My dad let her finish. The silence stretched for a few seconds. Then he said, "I am an architect, Claire. My son is an architect. We build things, buildings, relationships, families, and the first rule of building anything that is meant to last is that you must have a solid foundation. You don't build on sand. You don't build on lies. And you certainly don't build on a blueprint of deceit and fraud." "It wasn't fraud," she wailed. "It was a mistake." "Was it a mistake when you texted your mother that you'd stay for a year to make it look good before leaving?" My dad asked, his voice sharp as glass. "Was it a mistake when you wrote that once you were debt-free, you would have options and wouldn't be trapped anymore?" "That doesn't sound like a mistake. That sounds like a meticulously designed plan. The kind of plan an architect can appreciate from a technical standpoint. Morally, however, it is repugnant." He wasn't yelling. He was dissecting her piece by piece with surgical precision. "You didn't come here to explain," my dad continued. "You came here to execute the next phase of your plan. You failed to manipulate my son, so now you are attempting to manipulate his parents. You see us as another structural weakness you can exploit, but you are mistaken. This family is not a house of cards." Just as Claire was about to launch into another round of excuses, I heard a car pull up outside. Then another knock at the door. My mom opened it again. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she muttered. It was Claire's parents. Her father, John, was in the lead, looking flustered. Her mother, Susan, was right behind him, her face a mask of practiced concern. "We are so sorry to be here like this." John began trying to sound reasonable. "Our daughter is a wreck, as you can imagine. This has all been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. I think Mark may have overreacted." My dad cut him off. "Overreacted? John, I saw the texts. Your wife coached your daughter step by step on how to commit financial fraud against my son. Did you know about this?" John puffed up his chest, trying to look indignant. "Of course not. I'm as shocked as you are. Susan was just trying to help Claire with her financial anxiety. Her methods were misguided, but her heart was in the right place. I had to give it to him. He was a good actor. At the restaurant, I had almost felt sorry for him. I had thought he was a clueless victim in his wife's and daughter's scheme. But my father has been designing and negotiating contracts for 40 years. He can spot a lie from a mile away." "So you're telling me," my dad said slowly, "that your wife and daughter have been planning this for over 6 months, and you, her husband and father, had absolutely no idea. You live in the same house, you share finances, and you never once had a single conversation about a plan to extract $150,000 from my son. I am a busy man." John said dismissively, "I don't get involved in their day-to-day drama." "I see," my dad said, then he delivered the final blow. "That's interesting, because I took the liberty of having a conversation with my son's lawyer this morning. He was quite interested in the legal definition of conspiracy to commit fraud. It's a fascinating subject. He mentioned that in cases like this, investigators will often look at a family's complete financial records, phone records, bank statements, everything, to determine who was aware of the plan. It's amazing what a forensic accountant can uncover. The threat wasn't overt, but it was crystal clear. And it worked." John's face went white. Susan let out a little gasp. "Now this is an overreach," John stammered, his composure finally cracking. There is no need to involve lawyers, isn't there? My dad countered. Your daughter tried to steal a sum of money that would represent a down payment on a house. That's not a misunderstanding. That is grand larceny in a pretty dress. And you, by your own admission, either knew and did nothing, which makes you complicit, or you were so willfully ignorant of the scheme being hatched under your own roof that it amounts to gross negligence. Either way, you have no moral high ground here. He then turned his attention back to Claire. You came to this house looking for an ally. You will not find one here. You targeted my son because you thought his kindness was a weakness. You saw his stability as an opportunity. You are a predator and you are no longer welcome in this family or in this house. The engagement is over. The relationship is over. You will have no further contact with my son. If you attempt to contact him or us again, we will pursue a restraining order. Is that clear? Claire just stood there, speechless. Her fake tears dried up, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. She had been so certain she could manipulate them. She had walked into what she thought was a negotiation and found herself in a demolition. Now my dad said, his voice dropping to a final, dismissive tone, I suggest you and your family leave. You have a great deal to discuss, I imagine. I heard the door close. My dad picked up the phone. Are you still there, Mark? I'm here, I said. My voice was a little shaky. It's done, he said. The sight is clear. The aftermath was even more satisfying. John terrified that my dad would actually follow through and that his own shady finances might come to light completely imploded. He and Susan had a massive fight right there in my parents' driveway. He blamed her for the plan failing. She blamed him for not being a better actor. Claire was left with nothing. Her parents are apparently on the verge of divorce. Their own marriage built on a foundation just as rotten as the one she tried to build with me. Her father has cut her off financially, furious at the public humiliation and the risk she exposed him to. So, Claire is now back at home, in a house at war with itself, with no fiancé, no job that can cover her bills, and $150,000 of student loan debt that is still and will forever be entirely hers. She didn't just lose a fiancé, she lost her entire support system. She gambled everything on a perfect plan and she lost it all. The demolition is complete. Story 8, she laughed to her friends. He pays for Netflix and Hulu. Meanwhile, I watch them with my ex every night. I just smiled, but when she logged in later, the username on the account made her drop her remote. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was in my workshop in the back of the garage, meticulously sanding down a piece of reclaimed oak for a coffee table I was building. The garage side door was propped open for ventilation, and their voices drifted out from the back patio, clear as a bell in the quiet afternoon air. I'm 35. I run a custom furniture business and I own my house. My girlfriend, Megan, who is 31, moved in about 8 months ago. She'd been laid off from her marketing job and was trying to launch a freelance consulting business. I told her not to worry about rent or bills until she got her business off the ground. I figured I was just being a supportive partner. I make a good living, and I wanted to give her the space to pursue her dream without financial stress. I never saw it as enabling. I saw it as a temporary investment in our future. Her friend Jessica must have asked her something about her ex, Liam. I heard his name and my ears perked up. Megan had always been vague about him, just saying he was a mistake from her early 20s. Oh my God, Liam is hilarious. Megan said, her voice dripping with amusement. It's so funny. We have our little routine now. He comes over on Tuesdays and Thursdays when Jake works late. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I put down the sander and walked silently to the side door, staying just out of sight. Doesn't Jake get suspicious? That was her other friend, Carly, Jake. Megan let out a short, sharp laugh that cut me deeper than any insult. He has no idea. He's so wrapped up in his dusty workshop, he barely notices what day it is. The best part is he pays for everything. The Netflix, the Hulu, the ridiculously expensive internet. Liam and I just binge watch all the new shows together on Jake's dime. It's perfect. Jessica chimed in. So he pays for Netflix and Hulu and you watch them with your ex every night. Basically, Megan said, and they all erupted in laughter again. Liam calls him our official sponsor. It's our little inside joke. I stood there, hidden by the doorframe, and the world just shifted. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the casual, brutal disrespect. The mockery, The fact that my hard work, the very thing that provided the comfortable life she was enjoying, was the punchline to their little joke. I wasn't a partner to her. I was a utility, a provider to be used and laughed at behind his back. The anger was there, a white-hot flash, but something colder and calmer took over almost immediately. I didn't storm out there. I didn't yell. I just backed away from the door. My movements silent and deliberate. I walked back to my workbench, picked up my phone, and smiled. It was a grim, thin smile. The kind you see on a man who has just declared a war that his opponent doesn't even know has begun. They thought I was just a simple guy who worked with his hands. They were about to find out how methodical and precise those hands could be, even on a keyboard. While they continued to laugh on the patio, I sat down on a stool in my workshop and began to dismantle her world. First, the streaming services. Our little inside joke. I logged into my Netflix account. Her profile picture was a smiling selfie of us from a vacation I'd paid for. Her profile name was just Megan. I clicked Manage Profiles and edited her name. It now read, Megan and our sponsor Liam. I did the same for Hulu, changing her profile name to Liam Watches on this one. Then, I went into the account settings for both services and signed out all devices. Finally, I changed the master passwords to a complex 20-character string of random letters and numbers that I would never forget. Next, the finances. I logged into my main bank account. She had a supplementary credit card linked to my account for groceries and emergencies. I'd seen the statements. Her emergencies looked a lot like new shoes and expensive lunches with Jessica and Carly. I clicked the button to report her card as lost and requested it be immediately canceled. A new one would be sent to me, but her old one was now a useless piece of plastic. I then checked our joint account, which was supposed to be for shared expenses. I had put in $2,000 as a starting float. She had contributed nothing. I transferred the entire balance back to my personal account and initiated the process to close it. The financial support was over. Finally, the house. My house, the one my grandfather had left me. She wasn't on the lease or the mortgage. Legally, she was a month-to-month tenant, even though she paid no rent. I opened a new document and, using a legal template, drafted a formal 30-day notice to vacate. It was professional, impersonal, and legally airtight. I printed it, signed it, and left it on my desk. The whole process took less than 15 minutes. I felt nothing but a cold, clean sense of purpose. She had mistaken my generosity for weakness. She had mistaken my focus for ignorance. These were fatal errors in judgment. I went back to sanding the oak coffee table, the rhythmic motion of the tool calming and steady. I could still hear their faint laughter from the patio. Let them laugh. The punchline was coming, and it was going to be a killer. Update 1, 48 hours later. The support in the comments has been incredible. It's good to know that basic respect isn't an outdated concept. A lot of you were asking for a quick update, and the last 2 days have been eventful. The laughter on the patio eventually died down, and Megan's friends left around dinner time. She came into the workshop, all smiles, and told me she was ordering pizza. My treat, she said, waving her phone. I just nodded and told her that sounded good. I knew her card was about to be declined, but I wanted to see it happen. I followed her inside and sat at the kitchen island, watching her tap away at the food delivery app. I saw the exact moment it happened, the slight frown, the way she tapped the confirm payment button again. A little harder this time, the flicker of annoyance in her eyes. This stupid app is bugging out, she said, forcing a laugh. It's not taking my card. That's weird, I said, my voice perfectly neutral. Maybe try another one. She didn't have another one, of course, not one with any money on it. After a few more failed attempts, she threw her phone down in frustration. Whatever, I'll just use your card. What's the number again? No, I said. She looked up, surprised. No, what do you mean no, I'm hungry? I mean no, I'm not paying for the pizza. The confusion on her face was a sight to behold. This was a new script when she hadn't rehearsed. Why are you being so weird, she asked, her tone shifting from annoyed to accusatory. I'm just not feeling like a sponsor tonight, I said, letting the word hang in the air between us. Her face went pale. She knew. I don't know how, but she knew that I knew. She didn't say another word, just turned and walked into the living room. I heard the TV turn on. I went back to my workshop. The real explosion came about an hour later. I heard a shriek from the living room, followed by the sound of something hitting the floor. I walked to the doorway. She was standing there staring at the TV screen, the remote lying in pieces on the floor where she dropped it. The Netflix login screen was up, and there under the main account were the profile options. One of them read Megan and our sponsor Liam. She turned to look at me, her face a mask of fury and terror. "What is this?" she whispered. "That's your new profile name," I said calmly. I thought it was more accurate. "I changed the Hulu one too. You should check it out, it's clever. You were listening to me," she screamed. "You were spying on me. The window was open, Megan. You weren't exactly being quiet. It's hard to miss when your girlfriend and her friends are laughing about how she's cheating on you and using you for money." The gaslighting started immediately. It was a joke. I was taking it out of context. I was insecure, controlling. The same lines she'd probably used on every man she'd ever wronged. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just let her spin, let her exhaust her arsenal of excuses. When she finally paused to take a breath, I walked over to my desk in the corner of the room, picked up the envelope I'd prepared, and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's a 30-day notice to vacate the premises," I said. "Legally, you're a tenant. I'm terminating that tenancy. You have until the end of next month to remove your belongings from my property." She stared at the paper, then at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and hatred. "You can't kick me out. I live here. You lived here," I corrected her. "Your stay is over. Your card has been canceled and our joint account has been closed. The sponsorship has officially ended." She lunged at me then, trying to hit me, claw at me. I just sidestepped her, holding up my hands. "Don't, Megan, don't make this uglier than it already is." She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. They weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration. The tears of a con artist whose mark has just walked away from the table. The calls started the next day. Her mother called, screaming at me for throwing her daughter out on the street. I calmly explained that her daughter had been cheating on me for months and was now facing the consequences. I suggested she ask Megan about her sponsor, Liam. Then came Liam himself. He called from a blocked number, trying to play the tough guy. "You need to leave her alone, man. You can't just kick her out." "Liam," I said, a genuine smile in my voice, "I'm so glad you called. I was just thinking about you. You see, I've been sponsoring your little movie nights for a while now, and I feel like we have a real connection. In fact, I'm thinking of sending you a thank you gift. What's your address?" He was silent for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "Don't worry, I already have it. Your routine on Tuesdays and Thursdays is about to get a little more interesting. Have a good day." I hung up. I spent the rest of the day changing every password to every account we had ever shared. Utilities, Amazon, everything. I systematically erased her from my digital life. The house feels bigger now, quieter. She's been locked in the guest room, refusing to come out. Let her. The clock is ticking. 30 days isn't a long time when you have to find a new life, a new job, and a new sponsor. Update 2. 1 week later. It's been a week since the Netflix incident, and the fallout has been both predictable and deeply satisfying. Thanks for following along with this mess. Your comments have been a source of dark humor and genuine support. Megan stayed locked in the guest room for 2 full days. I left a tray of food outside her door once, which went untouched. On the 3rd day she emerged, her eyes puffy, her face pale. The defiance was gone, replaced by a desperate, calculating look. She tried to apologize. She said it was a mistake, that she loved me, that Liam meant nothing. I just looked at her and said, "The notice to vacate is on the table. You have 27 days left." Her apology quickly turned to bargaining. She could change. We could go to therapy. She would cut off all contact with Liam. She would get a job, a real job, and start paying her share of the bills. "It's too late for that, Megan," I said. "Trust isn't something you can fix with a promise. You didn't just cheat. You mocked me. You and your friends laughed at me. There's no coming back from that." The move out began in stages. She called Jessica and Carly to help her pack. They arrived looking like they were attending a funeral, refusing to make eye contact with me. I just stayed in my workshop, the sound of my tools providing a steady, industrious soundtrack to the end of my relationship. Now about Liam. After our little phone call, I did send him that gift. I found a local bakery that makes custom gift baskets. I ordered their biggest one, filled with expensive snacks, wine, and a fancy popcorn maker. I included a gift card for a local movie theater. The note I had them write was simple, to my favorite co-star. "Thanks for all the great nights. Sorry our show got canceled. From your official sponsor. I had it delivered to his workplace. He's a junior account manager at some downtown firm. I can only imagine the questions he got from his colleagues and his boss when a massive gift basket arrived for him with that note. The fallout was immediate. Megan told me during one of her tearful pleading sessions that Liam went ballistic. He called her, screaming that I was a psycho and that she had dragged him into her mess. He had teased her of telling me about him. He wasn't the brave protector anymore. He was a terrified coward, worried about his own reputation. He told her to lose his number and never contact him again. Her escape plan, her backup man, had evaporated at the first sign of trouble. The friends Jessica and Carly have also been dealt with in a more subtle way. They both work at the same marketing agency. I happen to know the owner of that agency through a business networking group. We're not close, but we're friendly. I send him a casual email. Hey Tom, quick question. I'm looking to hire a freelance marketing consultant. My ex-girlfriend was in the field and I'm trying to understand the industry standards for professional conduct. For example, is it common for consultants to advise their friends to actively deceive their financial partners? Just trying to get a lay of the land. Any insight would be appreciated. I didn't mention their names. I didn't have to. I knew he was smart enough to connect the dots. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that there was a very serious all-staff meeting at that agency last week about ethics, client relationships, and professional discretion. Jessica and Carly are apparently walking on eggshells, their reputations now under a microscope. They enabled her, they laughed with her, and now they get to share in her professional paranoia. Megan has been scrambling to find a place to live. She has no money, no job, and her credit is terrible. She called her parents, who apparently told her she had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. It seems her history of using people isn't a new development. She has 23 days left. The house is slowly emptying of her things. Each box she packs and moves to a storage unit she can't afford is another small victory. She thought she was playing a game, but she never understood the rules. She thought I was a simple man. She's learning much too late. That simple doesn't mean stupid. Final update. 3 months later. It's been 3 months since Megan moved out. The house is finally mine again. I finished that oak coffee table, and it's sitting in the living room, a solid, beautiful testament to what can be built with honest work. The silence that felt so heavy at first now just feels like peace. The 30-day notice period was tense. Megan became a ghost in the house, packing silently, avoiding me at all costs. The desperate apology stopped, replaced by a sullen, resentful silence. On the final day, she had a moving company, paid for by her parents, I assume, come and clear out the last of her belongings. She left the key on the counter without a word. I watched the truck pull away, and I didn't feel sadness or anger. I just felt relief. The infection had been removed. The consequences of her actions have been thorough, and from what I hear, devastating for her. Her attempt to build a freelance business is a non-starter. Without my financial backing and with her reputation in our local business community tarnished, she couldn't land a single client. The story of what happened in its broad strokes got out. People talk, and nobody wants to hire a consultant who was involved in such a messy, unethical situation. She ended up having to move 2 hours away back to her hometown into her childhood bedroom in her parents' house. The glamorous life she portrayed online was replaced by the humiliating reality of being a 31-year-old woman with no job, no savings, and no prospects living under her parents' roof. Liam, her co-star, faced his own fallout. The gift basket at his office apparently caused a huge stir. His boss had a long chat with him about judgment and professionalism. Worse for him, his long-term, on-again, off-again girlfriend, whom he was apparently cheating on with Megan, found out about the whole affair. She didn't just leave him. She made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly why. He wasn't the suave ladies' man anymore. He was just another pathetic cheater. As for Jessica and Carly, their careers have stalled. The ethics meeting at their agency was just the beginning. Their boss, now wary of their judgment, has reportedly passed them over for several key projects. They are still employed, but they are no longer on the fast track. They chose to be the audience for Megan's mockery, and now they get to live with the professional consequences of that choice. My life has moved on in a way I couldn't have imagined 3 months ago. The peace and quiet allowed me to focus on my business, and it's booming. I've taken on 2 new apprentices, teaching them the craft, and the feeling of building something real intangible has never been more satisfying. I did get one final communication from Megan about a month ago. It was a long, rambling email. It was the apology she should have given on day one. She said she was sorry, that she was insecure and foolish, and that she had thrown away the best thing that had ever happened to her. She said she was in therapy. She ended the email by asking if I could find it in my heart to give her a second chance. I thought about it for a whole 5 minutes. I thought about the laughter I heard from the patio. I thought about the words official sponsor. I thought about the casual, cruel disrespect. I typed a one-sentence reply. I wish you the best in your new life. Then I created a filter to send any future emails from her directly to the trash. The revenge was never about destroying her. It was about reclaiming my life, my home, and my self-respect.